win for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun. A mighty sword! Strike while the iron's hot. For Camelot! For Avalon! Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome back to another day of the SMITE Pro League here in Week 4, Phase 3 of the SPL, all brought to us by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. It's starting to get that time. We're almost at Halloween. It's spooky season, but one thing you don't need to be scared of is making sure that you can get anything that you need for your Halloween goods with a Prime membership. If you need to still get your costume if you're last minute, free 2-day shipping in that regard. If you need some good music to play, free music. You want to watch a scary movie? They probably got those for you there for free as well. And then jump that on over to your Twitch account and you can get some free games. If you wanted to play something spooky, got an opportunity there, free content, and then a free Twitch Prime subscription to your favorite streamer. So make the most out of your Prime membership and your Prime Gaming membership this time around. Thank you so much for Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me on the desk as we jump in to our final day of week number 4. We got our first set of the day coming up, the Olympus Bolts, the Oni Warriors to kind of start things out. And all of this season, and we've been talking about it a lot because it's so important, all this phase leading up to the SMITE World Championships that does take place over in January. Remember, as these players go through this first phase, we then move into the Phase 3 playoffs. We take our top 6 teams for there. That determines our first 4 teams that auto-qualify into the quarterfinals for the World Championships in January. Then, for the ones that didn't quite make it, they got to wait until the SCC teams go through all of their stuff in December, and then that week before Worlds is when we bring those last 4 SPL teams, the top 4 SCC teams, and then we take the top 4 out of those 8 to the World Championships to face off on January 13th through the 15th in Arlington, Texas. So, win games, you get a chance to go to Worlds and try and get your chance to become the World Championships. Taking a look at the schedule for today, though, and the schedule for this week, what you've already missed so far was a Camelot Kings 2-0 earlier on and an Atlantis Leviathans 2-1 over the Jade Dragons. Scarabs found their first win of the phase, 2-1 over the Valks. Oni Warriors got the 2-0 yesterday against the Tartarus Titans. That moves us into today, where we start things off with the Olympus Bolts, the Oni Warriors, Solar Scarabs, Tartarus Titans, and then we close our day with the Atlantis Leviathans and the Valhalla Valkyries. Taking a look at our standings, because, man, the standings have changed quite a bit in just the last few days. The Leviathans, who were sitting right around that 4th seed for a little while, jumped up to 1st, then got bumped down to 2nd with the Oni Warriors, who then got pushed down to 4th, now jumped themselves up to the 1st seed. The Dragons, who are at the top of the charts, are now suddenly down in 3rd. We have had a wild shakeup as far as the standings is concerned. And then down there in those bottom 4, the Titans only 1 win above the other 3 teams, the Valks, Scarabs, and Bolts, who all have now gotten their 1 win. And so it all comes down to the plus or minus. Again, I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin with me in case you forgot for a moment who was helping me out onto the desk. How you doing today, Mifflin?
Yeah, I'm all right. No real place to rest my hands.
No.
I don't know who did that, but
Yeah, it's a real tragedy.
I'll live.
Yeah, we'll make it through. It's not too bad over there. But moving into our very first set of the day, Olympus Bolts and Oni Warriors. The Oni Warriors, probably one of the hottest conversations as far as the talk of the town right now. I mean, these guys have been performing really well this phase. They got their win over the Tartarus Titans yesterday. And, man, talking about just some of the players on this team individually, Vogt had a great performance yesterday, even Dardes as well. And I think maybe Dardes might be a good point to kind of hit on yesterday, because we go into the picks and bans, and one of the conversations that we always have, Miff, with this team is, okay, you can't let Cuva have Dodgy. You can't let Dardes have Morgan. Dardes got Morgan twice yesterday, and I think we got to see a good reason why you don't give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so good, the Oni Warriors, at playing around the Morgan. It's difficult to navigate the earliest portions of the match. That's really the weakness of Morgan, but doesn't seem like it when Dardes is piloting that god. He just gets his farm very quickly and then gets involved on the map. Generally, the Oni Warriors don't really rely on the enemy team to draft good transformations for Dardes. They've always got them for themselves, be it the Bologna or at times the Hun bots, and really this squad is so strong at playing around that. But even talking about Dardes as must-play gods, or must-ban rather, I think the Oni Warriors could add 1 to that list. Don't let Nika get that Hades, man. That was some wild plays from him.
For sure. I mean, we just got to see a beautiful highlight of it earlier where he gets a triple kill under the Fire Giant. This fight right here, which something that we talked to Nika about in the post-game, which is just the mindset that these players have had for how long they've been going when they recognize, okay, they just let a Phoenix go for free. Okay, we don't see these guys on the map. Surely something's probably going up, and then quick response time, able to turn around and turn a team fight to their favor. Oni Warriors, there's a reason these guys are sitting in the top 4. There's a reason these guys are currently the #1 seed in the SMITE Pro League right now. I mean, this is a strong group of players on this squad, and we've also got one of those players standing by for our pregame interview. It's Dardes standing by with Goremizer.
Dardes, as said, standing by, ready for the interview. We talked to Nika a little bit yesterday after you guys got your win over the Titans, but I just kind of want to ask you, I mean, top of the standings, seems like it must feel really good. How does being in first feel to you?
I mean, it feels great. I mean, I don't know, we're just playing, you know. Like, I don't know how we're first, you know, but I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Especially when it's maybe confusing for you. You're going up against, actually, I was going to talk about the Bolts. I do want to revert that, though, to an 11 a.m. question. We've seen a lot of teams, Titans come to my mind, but when they play at 11, it's a little different than when we see them come in later in the afternoon. What's the 11 a.m. Warriors feel like?
I think everyone wakes up early in the team. Like, Fred wakes up at 8 a.m. every day, so I think 11, I mean, we always stream at 11 a.m. as well, so I think we're fine. It's like perfect time for us.
There you go. Everyone's awake. That's what I want to hear, because sometimes we see people walking like zombies back to the player booths. You're going to be taking on the Bolts here today. And, you know, they haven't been at the same level that we've kind of gotten used to through the rest of the year. What are your thoughts, really, on the Bolts right now and maybe how this matchup will go?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on with them, but like, you would think that with Bastion as well, you know, like, he's not a bad player, you know. So, but I don't know, like, maybe it's the meta. Like, I feel like they're not like finding their own playstyle and they're trying to copy others. So maybe that's an issue. I don't know. I think they should find their own playstyle and just play it. Just play it, even if it doesn't work at first. Just keep playing it. It's going to work at some point.
It's got to work eventually, right? And, well, maybe that'll be today. Maybe it won't be. Thanks for your time, man. Good luck in your games. We're going to throw it back to the desk to continue breaking it down.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gore and Dardes, for that pregame interview. And I think Dardes kind of echoes a lot of what we've been saying over on the desk, is that the Bolts are really kind of struggling to maybe find an identity for themselves right now, to kind of find that play style that works well for them. It kind of feels like at the moment, this seems like a little bit of a lost team, Mifflin. We haven't really seen much out of the Bolts ever since Haddix has left the squad. Baskin comes over to try and fill in those shoes, but you can only fill in the mechanics to so far out there. It then comes down to who's going to be that shot caller for the team, who's going to be the one to make those kind of calls and those plays for this squad. And right now, Mifflin, I'm not sure who that is over for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, in this position, you got to rely on players that have been around the team for a little bit longer. Darda says it very well. Baskin, sure, a phenomenal player, very good, but you can't rely on your newbie to the team to also pick up the role of shot caller. Unfortunately for Baskin, that seems to have been the exact role that Haddix was filling for this team. A consistent win condition in the lane, as well as just the direction around the macro, around objective play, where you want to leverage your leads, how you want to approach the map. That's the stuff the Olympus Bolts need to look towards. And there are players on this team that, outsider looking in, you would assume fill that role or were doing it beforehand. Before Haddix had left, I had always assumed it's probably Barracuda that was leading the charge. It probably is this 10-year veteran that is telling the team how he wants to play, but it seems to have just not been the case. And if it has been, maybe Barracuda finds himself in a slump, because the Olympus Bolts, as you said, have been looking a little bit lost on the map. If the initial strategy doesn't work out, you can almost feel like a dejected just play style from them. They slow down, they stop maneuvering, they kind of just wait for the enemies to make egregious errors. And when you're playing against the #1 seed in the league like you are today, I don't think you could just sit around and wait for them to make a mistake. You need to make them feel some sort of pressure. You need to force them into a position where mistakes might happen.
It really does feel like sometimes a lot of that weight can be put onto Lasbra in the jungle. You know, when Lasbra is having a really good game, and this is something that we talk about of the Bolts kind of at the start of the year, maybe even turn to last year's. When Lasbra is having a really good game, the Bolts are probably winning. The Bolts are probably having real good games themselves. When Lasbra's not doing so well, it doesn't look so much, but even as of recent, even when Lasbra is getting these pop-off performances, these 3-0 starts, or these 2-0 early double kills, things like this, it still doesn't feel like that's got enough wind under the sail for the Bolts to really be able to pull through there. So I think you're right that maybe trying to lean on maybe a little bit more Barracuda or even Venenu, who's been around the scene for quite a few years himself, to see if the Bolts can bring this one back. But we're ready to go into the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts. It'll be the Bolts taking the first pick mantle this time around. Oni Warriors, after their win yesterday, just got themselves up to be the number 1 seed in the SPL. We'll see if the Bolts can be one of the only other teams to potentially topple this Oni Warriors squad. But out of performance, the squad that the Oni Warriors had yesterday, Dardes on that Morgan twice, Cuvo Fred on the Hunbats twice. Gotta imagine that if you're the Olympus Bolts, those are probably 2 picks, along with maybe even that Dodgy, that you might not want to let through.
It does seem like it is actually the only Warriors in that first pick position. A small shift up there. Look, the Olympus Bolts, having got the data of the previous set from the Oni Warriors, can say Morrigan is a major win condition. Rom seems to be something that Vote is willing to go towards consistently. Can't let that Hades through. Don't want things like that to happen to you. And maybe you're worried about some of Neil Ma's picks. The Ymir, the Bacchus, both very dominant. Seems like a very difficult position to be forced to ban out what I would consider maybe only 1 or 2 actual meta picks, as opposed to just the flavor selections that the Oni Warriors have elected to go for themselves. This is surprising, though. If anyone was going to be banning the Dodgy, I'd assumed it would have been the Oni Warriors.
Well, for now, it will be Pele and Kabrakan banned by the Warriors. Bolts take Yamoja and Dodgy, throw a Naja into the mix for the Oni Warriors, and now we've got 4 Assassin bans taken away. That Hunbats that was so pivotal yesterday for the Oni Warriors comp has been taken out. The Morgan notably still on the table, but with Hades still up, and with the performance Nika had yesterday, absolutely no surprise to see the Oni Warriors snap block that pick.
Yeah, Nika was cheesing when he walked into the studio today. I said, that is the face of a man who's trying to lock in Hades again. He looks me dead in my eyes, stops in his tracks, and says, well, if it's open, I'm just going to do it. And clearly a man that tells no lies. Nika takes it first overall for the Oni Warriors. And it's a vote of confidence not only in his ability to play this pick, but also the fact that he doesn't think there's probably any too poor of counter matchups. You're not locking Hades like, oh, sure hope they don't have X God on the other side. But when we look historically at Smite, some of the answers to Hades lie in defense shred. You get so many protections, so many mitigations when you're channeling the Pillars of Agony. In the past, Naja was a very good, or not Naja, Nemesis was a very good answer. AMC was a pretty decent answer as well. So the Olympus Bolts have got some pretty decent avenues if they want to directly address this Hades. But that was back when Hades was building Bruiser, or even a more tank-style build. If you're going full mage, those are both 2 picks that might struggle. You apply the fear, it doesn't matter that Nemesis has an HP shield, you've removed it, now you've got the Polynomicon style of build, so you're already bursting. AMC, largely immobile, doesn't really deal with Pillars of Agony very well, and if it's actually dealing damage, that's so hard to deal with. So I'm excited to see how the Bolts decide to play around this Hades, but instead, they decided to target out 2 of those gods I was talking about for the Oni Warriors, some strength points of their previous compositions, get the Ymir and the Morrigan for themselves.
So if you can't ban all of those gods, might as well at least take a few of them for yourself. As you say, Ymir, Morrigan to the Bolts, Cupid, Amoose, and Cobb over to the Oni Warriors. And AMC has been performing fairly well, 67% win rate of the 12 games that he's been playing. But when he gets into the hands of players like Dardes, Big Man Tings, sometimes it feels like this god is completely unstoppable. And then couple that in with the Cupid, so you have the double hunters. We start moving towards the objective play. Olympus Bolts, what is their answer back? Ishtar in the top 3. Maybe not what I would have been expecting as a top 3 pick there, Mifflin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the most massive fan of Ishtar, but she certainly does have fight potential. That ultimate, so strong. The second you take over to level 5, you've got pretty decent ability to force these engagements, assuming it is going to be a Cupid in the lane. I think that's a fair assumption to make. The CC immunity that Ishtar gets from her ultimate should deal with Fields of Love at least a little bit. You can work your way out of that damage or make sure you're not getting hit by that Mez quite as often. But Ymir and Ishtar together might struggle against a kill lane that incorporates Cupid. Ymir largely immobile, very susceptible to those early first bloods. Jake, a player that has been struggling recently in the early laning phase, I believe in his last 5 games, first blooded twice on second or third wave, and generally up against that Cupid is where it does happen. The Oni Warriors, I think, could just move in towards an incredibly aggressive support and try and leverage that early pressure.
Well, a few more assassins banned in the second wave. Mercury, Awelish, and Camazotz all notably. And then a Khepri ban from the Bolts. Maybe recognize that the Warriors don't quite have their front line just yet, so that leaves Umoja, Khepri, Kabrakan, and the Amir all taken away. Atlas still available if that's something that Neil might want to go over towards. Artio notably still available as well if you want to throw that over into the duo lane. We've been seeing Artio make her way over there. But for the Olympus Bolts, missing their jungler, missing their solo laner. Still plenty of Warriors, plenty of other Guardians that can be picked up and thrown over there. And kind of going back onto your Nemesis point from earlier on, with how much more often we've been seeing Cthulhu in these last few weeks, I'm a little surprised we haven't been seeing much Nemesis.
Yeah, maybe just a byproduct of the meta as it is. We've seen a lot of emphasis on gods with structures, walls, cages, things along those lines. Nemesis doesn't necessarily deal with those incredibly well, so might be strong enough to dissuade any of these teams from actually looking towards that pick, but I do tend to agree. Any god that's entire goal in a late game team fight is to get into the middle of your back line and become a massive target, Nemesis is generally the answer. Cthulhu, Hades both kind of fill that archetype very, very well. Amaterasu as the lock-in for the Olympus Bolts. You've got great chase potential up against AMC. You can make sure that he isn't able to get involved in these team fights as easily. Cupid post-dash, you can just apply dazzling offensive there as well. But it's not a god that generally dominates lane. It's not a god that really generates a whole lot of pressure. And up against a Hades, who's going to be full clearing your wave at level 3, and he's never going to stop, you kind of want to be able to match at least a little bit of that minion push potential because of what we've seen from solo laners recently. SOT rotating out at like the 10-minute mark and never going back. Nika doing a very similar style of play as well. It seems like a lot of teams in the league, or at least near the top of the standings, have really emphasized high rotation ability compositions. I want to clear my wave, I want to get out of that lane, I want to get involved in the team fight, especially in 10-10, with Gold Fury being a little bit easier to kill, with Pyromancer being a little bit easier to kill. It is so valuable to be allowed to rotate.
Sobek will get his Phase 3 debut, going over for Neil Ma and the Oni Warriors. So a Sobek Cupid lane, that's a throwback lane in Smite. Easy one to go with, easy follow-up. Yeah. Easy one to make some combos with as well, just between if you're in the mid lane, throw them right into a Stinger. If you're in the dual lane, throw that right into a Heart Bomb or a Fields of Love. Very easy setup for his team, but also very dangerous because we do talk about if you go in with the Sobek and if they decide to beat your pluck, or if you miss that pluck, you are essentially just kind of sitting in the midst of enemy territory. How do you feel about the Sobek Susano as a bottom 2 there for the Oni Warriors?
Susano has decent targets. He's one of the best gods at hunting a Morrigan. One of the best things your assassins can do into any composition that has a Morrigan in it is have them just run her down and say, look, you might get a transformation that could really change up these team fights, but you're going to have to do it at 50% HP. You at least have to start it at half. And Susano being so mobile and so sneaky in some of these team fights can really put pressure onto that pick. Also, throughout the early portions of the game, Morrigan struggles against those Susano ganks, so I love what he brings to this draft for the Oni Warriors, a bridge into the late game, essentially. Sobek was exactly what I was asking for from the support, in that it's just a high pressure, I'm going to apply my CC, if Heart Bomb connects, you might just die style of pick, right? So Sobek will facilitate that style very, very well. And when you've got a double hunter composition, any sort of support that can funnel single targets to your hunters is strong, and Sobek counts himself amongst those. A pluck like Sylvanas, maybe a Hercules, a Sobek, anybody that's displacing one consistently is very good. But we had heard in the past that the answer to Sobek was, hey, if in the late game, if they've got beads and I go for pluck, I'm just going to die if they beads it. You're not exactly so tanky. But in 10-10, with itemization as it is, with Mail Renewal as strong as it is right now, I don't think Sobek has to feel as cautious around his initiations. And looking at the punish game on the Olympus Bolts, it might just take a while to kill him.
And speaking about the Olympus Bolts, final pick for them, Ratatoskr, going to be going over to Lasbra in the jungle. Fairly strong performing god. We've been seeing a lot of success out of this god over to the SCC. We've been seeing a little bit of success over with him into the SPL, but it does feel like this is kind of Lasbra's get in there and really get aggressive kind of a play style for this Ratatoskr. Do you think that this kind of fills maybe some of the empty holes that the Bolts were missing in their composition up until this point?
I like Ratatoskr. I'm going to say that first because what I'm going to say next might devalue that a little bit. Why Ratatoskr over Thor here? Thor is incredibly strong right now, has plenty of ways to proc item effects, has seen a multitude of buffs, but most importantly, has the wall to deal with a Cupid and an AMC, 2 picks that just don't have answers to putting a wall behind you. I would have loved to have seen that. Ratatasker needs to more often initiate with his ultimate. Thor could just walk up, drop wall, drop hammer, and you're probably just dead.
Well, we'll see if the Olympus Bolts can bring it back together and find themselves a win as we throw it into game number 1 between the Warriors and the Bolts with Gore and Trelly.
That's right. Thanks so much, J-Mac and Mifflin on the desk. It is Gore, and it is Trelly.
What?
He's not lying to you. And it is the Bolts and the Warriors. Now, Trelly, a lot of fun stuff, at least in my mind, around this matchup. First and foremost, and it's something I wrote down and then promptly forgot because I put it down like 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But you pointed out helpfully before we came in here. The Warriors have never beaten the Bolts.
Not one single time since the
Since
Warriors
season
have
8,
been a thing
yeah.
and the Bolts have been a thing.
Yeah, while they've played under those names.
Right. And that's a long time.
It's a long time.
But I got to be honest, if there was a time for it to happen, I think it would be now, where the Bolts are having a little bit of an identity crisis and where the Warriors have been pretty on point lately. So we'll have to see if that is something that could happen. But as you would expect from this current meta, the supports just running around, just running
like
at each other.
Playing annoyance, right, to each other.
Vote
as
actually
best as
didn't
possible.
start green though. That's interesting.
And and that's going to be a fun one to maybe explore because, especially now looking at it, Barra as well, that green buff's still going to be hanging up over there for the Bolts. Took a little while to get over there, though. Maybe it was just the damage clear that the Ishtar was bringing and the Morrigan to the red buff. They decided to split that together. Junglers off on their own over on the right. So definitely interesting start. Lasber already level 2, Vin level 2. And so just getting that a little earlier than maybe the Warriors have isn't going to result in much. Lasber is nowhere to be seen. But for the duo lanes, it could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so Barrett drops green, doesn't pick it up, goes to get purple, gets it, and then Vote and Neil have to go all the way back for it. But I guess the idea is not only do you not lose your purple, you don't let Jake walk at it, you also just don't have to fear the early damage of a Ymir, I suppose. Either way,
Well,
should
and
be
then
just fine.
at this point, you're the same level now, right? Like, you've got the same amount of experience. You're losing some to the tower, but does it hurt that much? I mean, well, like, Neil didn't pick up the green, so maybe there's something there, but neither did Jake. I don't know. At this point in the game, they pretty much come out mostly equal.
But then you lose the scepter and you give it to Jake, and that's going to be
point.
even more lane pressure. So I guess that was just the respect call. Like, hey, they've got some good early damage with the Ymir. We don't want to deal with that. Let's just do our purple buff and back up in the moment. So I'm looking for the jungle gank more than anything. We were talking a little bit about the Ratatosker on the desk. I tend to agree with what Miff was saying, but I also think that what Rat does bring over Thor at the moment is just a little bit more early pressure. You don't need your ultimate on a Ratatosker to find some early ganks with the slow, with the stun. You can get active a little bit earlier. Of course, level 5, Thor's online, but Rat could have made that early rotation, the cringe gank if you want to call it. Didn't happen that way. Rat just sitting by and farming at the moment, but we'll have to see if anything comes from a pluck like that. Not going to be the case. Barracuda knows not too much damage coming through. Holds on to the beats.
I like that kind of call, right? Patience, kind of recognizing, like, man, I'm Ishtar. I'm not in trouble at any point right now. Maybe an opportunity for a stolen purple buff. Jake gets aggressive hog used by Neil. There's going to be a pluck back. This one feels like it might be a little bit more. Sprint used by Jake. There's going to be the stun from the heart bomb. Not enough damage, though. Kill off the Ymir. But going back to the Ratatosker, and this is something I want to see if it sways you a little bit, because the conversation right now has been like Rat versus Thor. What can he provide? What can maybe he fall on? Does it change your mind at all, knowing that one of Lasbra's highest winning gods is the Ratatosker?
I mean, it doesn't change my mind because I was already all for
Oh yeah, I guess so. You were already there.
Yeah.
Does it reinforce your?
Yeah,
sense,
I think it provides some more back. Because again, I think Rat a little bit easier to execute on. The Acorn Blast so much easier to hit than a raw double tap. Of course, with the wall changes, Thor is still sick. Like I am wholeheartedly in agreement with that. But it seems like Rat just a comfort pick for Lasbra as well as gonna be good for Ven. You know, you both can go into that Ratatosker and that could be some solid engage. I tend to want to go towards the Susana when I'm the Morgan just because it's way easier. You know, especially up against an AMC, Dardes is going to have to hold on to those beads if they're gone. You're in 100-0 territory as long as Ven is able to close gap and juke out the honey and try and get close with that Morgan kit. So Things to consider as the game goes on, but so far, 0-0, 4 minutes in. This is pretty much par for the course for how a lot of these SPL sets have been going as of late.
Yeah, either you're going to get a first blood super quick and then maybe be able to find some pressure, or this, right, where it's a lot more methodical. And admittedly, just because, like, where are you going to get your kill pressure? I haven't seen Dardes step beyond the tower line more than once or twice. Like, he's been right here the entirety of this lane, covered by hives, making sure things are safe. You got wards from the bolts on either side. And the only other place that it feels like there could maybe be some kill potentials over in the duo lane, like you said, kind of waiting maybe for the jungle ganks to come over here.
The Gungle Janks, of
the
course.
Gungle Janks.
Yeah, we've seen
we're all familiar with the Gungle Janks. If the jungle ganks came over to that lane, maybe something can happen. But I guess that's the question of the moment. Rat level 6 now, has the ult, good engage. If you go to the duo lane, they both have dashes. If you go to solo lane, they have a dash. Like, it feels like if you're not getting just really good CC and great follow-up, they might just run away from you.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern right now for Cuvo is Lasper. The fact that if he does go for a gank, he has Blink, he doesn't have that much damage. Whereas Lasper has the full Acorn, sitting here, probably going to be able to steal this away pretty easily if nothing was going to be bursted. And that's the thing. If Cuvo's looking for a gank, as you said, there's a lot of escapes on the map. If it's not a quick, easy kill, get in, get out situation, Lasper can go up into the sky, fly all the way over. I guess not fly, but sit on the trees the whole way over, and then make your life miserable. You just don't have that CC immunity. So Cuvo probably smart to wait for at least a full item before trying to get active on the map on the Susano. I was going to say Lasper is heading over to right for a bit, but it's going to be real difficult to try and kill Nika with a full Book of Thoth at the moment. A ton of damage coming from this Hades, as well as, you know, we talked about Cuvo Fred not having beads, but Lasper doesn't have the beads either. So if that Pillar of Agony came through, there's a bit of CC you'd have to worry about, along with the fear that Hades can provide. So it looks like just back to the drawing board for both of these junglers.
And it's kind of surprising. Like, if you told me Susano wasn't going to get super active early on, I don't think I'm going to blink twice at that. I'll be like, oh, okay. Like, he could, but he doesn't have to. You tell me the Rat's not going to get active early on, I'm like, okay, that's a little eye-catching. Maybe Lazarus going to look for something over here. You just highlighted some reasons that he might need to be worried. This is it. The Pillar of Agony pulling 2 in. But Nika taking a lot of damage in the process. The Dazzling Offensive is enough to put him under, and Baskin picks up first blood.
Yeah, unfortunate for Nika. Decided to use the Pillar of Agony instead of the beads. Probably recognized that there was going to be a lot of CC coming through. You got the slow from Lazarus. You got the stun that was already used. And then, of course, Dazzling Offensive coming out from Baskin. Smart call. When you're up against a full damage Hades, I think the call is either you want to camp him and try and get your solo laner ahead, which we know Lasper loves playing off the solo lane, or, you know, ignore him and hope he doesn't rotate. This is probably the better call. Nika not getting able to free farm on this pick. We know how explosive he can be if he's let to get online on this Hades. First blood going over to Baskin in this sense, and actually a pretty big XP lead I'm starting to notice for the side of the Bolts. Pretty much everyone's got a level lead except that duo lane, both sitting at level 7. And about 1,500 so far. The gold, not going to be that much. It's about 700 give or take, but that XP really does start to matter.
Oh, good wall, good freeze. Beads used by Vote just to stay alive. Dash at like the perfect angle as well to make sure he gets out of there. A lot of pressure from the duo lane. The Bolts looking for pressure everywhere now after Lasper gets that first blood. Whether or not they can find it a little like a duel over the obelisk and the shrines themselves, trying to get these offerings. Unfortunately, a little late there for Neil to try and steal any away. Speaking of steal away, they might be in a position to go for a good fight. Freeze is great onto Dardes, and the pluck is just a little short to lock down Bera. Neil, lurking in the water, slows him down, but does not have the chase down or the confidence to be able to keep on that pick. Bera, no beads used. Is he going to be able to just walk out of that one?
Yeah, the patience from Bera has been pristine this game. I mean, that first pluck, you know, not the biggest deal. No items online, but that one, I would have been a little bit scared. We saw Cuvo was about at the red buff, and if there would have been a blink, maybe a closed gap in that situation, could be something that would have made Bera regret not beadsing. But with the sprint from Jake and the support, it's going to be just fine. You can see the Bolts are holding the Trebuchet back for the time being, not wanting to let some free damage come through, but we saw this trick once before. Oh, the stun off the mark. That means Nika going to be just fine in this lane. Cuvo Fred might go for the regank.
Yeah, he's here. What can he get out of it? Lasper with a dash seems to be enough to stifle them. Imagine you've been picked up, and you know you're having this conversation. You're Jake. You are a pro league support player. You've also now been limited down to trebuchet stopper.
Yeah.
You are nothing more like
You are a
you're a
doorstop.
glorified doorstop
You're a
for
rock.
the last like minute and a half here. We'll have to watch where this one goes. And you know what? Ymir does a great job of that. He's an ice giant. And you tell him to freeze, he's already there.
Yeah. what we didn't know is that Jake and Ven were playing freeze tag, and then Jake just got up and like, guys, can you unfreeze me?
And nobody came over to play.
Like we've got a
They
game
froze him,
going.
and then they decided to leave, and Jake feels like that's kind of sad.
Yeah, but Jake's like, I'm not moving. I won't do it. Trebuchet does end up going down, so not too much of a gain there for the Olympus Bolts. I think it was more so to try and starve out a little bit of XP from Dardes, but not going to be the case either. Looking at the goal lead, again, pretty much the same. Olympus Bolts are pulling ahead just a bit, but the XP actually closed up in the meantime. It's just been that one kill that we saw over in solo lane. I think that once that fire, or the Pyromancer rather, does spawn in, we might see a little bit more aggression on the right side of the map, especially because solo lane for the Bolts at the moment has a bit of a lead. Baskin has Shoguns and the Berserker Shield, so going to be going real fast if they do decide to try and burn through it. They just have the option to go over towards that Pyromancer if they'd like to, especially because Ven does have the transformation. If Dardes wants to step up, you know, they can try and force him out with some of these jungle ultimates from the mid laner. I think they've got some doors to be open on the right side of the map.
A lot of good burn. Pyromancer, Gold Fury as well, both a little easier to kill now on 9-10. So it makes it very easy. And the Bolts, like, they liked going for Pyros early anyway, so it feels like that should be right in their wheelhouse. Lasbra in a little bit of trouble. Pluck going to be a little too late. Lasbra up onto the tree, and he leaps out of there. Takes the Stinger with him as well. Dardes is still going to be able to pick that up. So unfortunately, doesn't quite get that one away. Showcases what the Warriors can do in the blink of an eye. And that's kind of something I was going to talk to you about. I mean, just now finished the Transcendence. Thieves is going to be finished there very shortly for Neil. But you also look over towards Nika build, the Thoth, as well as the Warlock staff now online. We might have to hold that thought as Jake, forced to use the Sprint. Stinger was thrown out. Vin goes into the Hades and is trying to get some pressure back. Pillar of Agony was nice. And get some decent damage out there. Neil just off the mark with the pluck. There's a good pullback from Cuvo. Has to play it carefully and does have some bodies next one, but the stun is good. The kill is better. Cuvo puts one on the board for the Warriors, and the rest of them are going to disengage.
Wow, that was such a back and forth fight. It really looked like at first Lazarus was caught out. Beautiful ultimate to get out. But immediately Dardes was able to pick up the Stinger once again and then throw it into Jake. Jake sprints out at that point. Okay, Jake's not the target anymore. Turn it on to Cuvo, but just so much movement on this Susano, able to zoom out of there. And unfortunately, after all that, Ven was in a position where he had either had to commit to a kill or run, was slowed by the honey and said, you know what, I might as well try and kill Cuvo. We have Lasbra rotating in, but didn't quite have the damage to finish up that one. So the Oni Warriors answer back with a kill of their own onto Cuvo Fred. Going to even up some of that XP differential in the jungle for Lasbra and Cuvo, now both sitting at level 11. But I thought Nika rotated for a second. It threw me off the fact that the Morgan turned into someone that wasn't a jungler, right? That, like the Hades
it's
this
so
early
rare.
on. I was like, wait, Nika's here? Wait. And then I realized it was a red health bar, and I was like, oh, okay. So good old, got a lot of relics down. Cuvo Fred going to take some damage, and have to drop the Typhoon there out of fear from the aggression from Awesome Jake.
Was wondering if maybe Lasbra was going to be in some trouble. He has his ult, though. Doesn't feel like anything bad's going to happen there. Stinger back up for Dardes, thrown immediately into Jake. No sprint this time, and the autos are just clean. The honey slows him down. And it's another kill for Cuvo Fred. 2-0 for the jungler. And they force the ult out of Lasbra, who thought he maybe could have saved his support. Unfortunate for him. A little late on getting up to the sky. So the Warriors able to pick up some pretty clean engagements over the last minute or so.
Yeah, off the back of Dardes consistently getting the Stinger back, it seems like whenever they want to fight in mid, it's like, Dardes, you're ult up? Yeah, it's never not up. Like, I'm fine. And I also have a ton of DPS to help out with Pyromancer if need be. So the Oni Warriors seem to be getting this one for absolute free. First objective of the game going the way of the Oni Warriors as well. And now the gold going to be in their favor a bit, just about under 1K for the Oni Warriors. I imagine once Baskin rotates in, the fight for the Olympus Bolts looks a lot stronger. You know, the 1-0 Amaterasu does have a fair bit of damage and just attack speed online, as well as some extra setup, which I think they need. Awesome Jake can't really close gap at the moment and doesn't have a blink available, just has the root sprint. as we see a little bit of a brawl happening over in left lane. But Vote doesn't seem to be scared. Vote's actually getting confident because the rest of his team's on the way.
Yeah, buying time. Cuvo, Neil, and Dardes over here. Good wall from Jake. Keeps Neil isolated. Stun after stun seems to lock him down. But a double ult coming in from the Warriors turns it around. Lazara, Bera, half health. Now it's just about staying alive and getting out of there. Another good-looking wall from Jake. But no real follow-up. 4 and 4 on the left-hand side trying to fight each other. Actually, 5 and 4 with Baskin's rotation. That's going to be the Gold Fury started up for the Bolts with the numbers advantage. Nika's come in. Neil's healing up. Gold Fury, half health. Cuvo around the back. A lot of ults already used. Still have one for Dardes if the Stinger's necessary. Still have that lurking in the water. Still have Pillar of Agony. Cuvo looking for something. Gets stunned out by Bera. Bera barely able to get out of there. Same thing for Cuvo. Both disengaging Lazara. No way he's going in. Goes deep into the back line. Super low health bar for the Ratatoskr. The fight still going around the Pillar and the Obelisk up here for the Bolts. Nika picks up Jake. They're going to lock him down. Lazara ran off to the other side. Cuvo got the reset. Lazara playing it very close with the Harpies. And it's going to be a Gold Fury pull by the Warriors. 2 hunters. You think they can burn this down? Still trying to figure out where their pressure is right now, Trelly. They can kill off Bera. That'd be massive for them. The Mez not going to connect from the Ishtar. Gold Fury going to go down for the Warriors.
Wow.
So they get themselves the kill, and they get on out of there with the objective.
That was a very slow and calculated pull. I kept looking at Baskin, you know, juking the plucks, had the shield ready, but not enough damage to try and steal that one. I mean, Lazara was so weak there. Cuvo also got out with a sliver of HP, but I think just more sustain on the side of the Oni Warriors for sure. And also, doesn't seem like anyone's getting to Dardes. I mean, had his ultimate up that whole time, both relics as well. The AMC is essentially free casting, so whenever that's happening, the fight's not going to look too clean. Relic's certainly down. Cuvo Fred had to use pretty much everything during that engagement. And I'm thinking besides that, that's all the Bolts really had going for them for that fight, right? You almost killed Cuvo. That's about it. Barracuda is taking a little bit of damage. No heart bomb yet, but does have it up soon. Doesn't even need it.
Who cares? You're just going to walk up and do it to them. They do return the kill, the favor from the Bolts. Vote picks up a solo onto Bera. Vin and crew bully Dardes in mid and force that Stinger to stay down, plus get the beads, plus the Aegis. Shut down the AMC right now to make sure that it stays a little more stifled in mid.
That might be the first time I've seen Dardes' ult down since the start of the game. Unfortunate, won't be able to use the Stinger for quite some time, and as you said, beads and Aegis could be massive. That does open up some doors here for the Olympus Bolts to try and get active in the mid lane, but unfortunately for the Bolts, and Barracuda in particular, didn't back up, didn't retreat in time to get a second relic, so was sitting on just the beads that weren't available. The ultimate was not enough to get out of the Fields of Love, and Vote just doing way too much damage in this duel lane. Has a 2-level lead currently, level 16 for this Cupid. I'm sure Vote's sitting just fine in the lane with 3k gold in hand, just about. So, yeah, I'm imagining a kin size, maybe like a tier 2 Odibo, something like that to be had. And it's definitely, yeah, it was exactly what I thought. Wow, I know my item gold, but either way.
You nailed it.
Vote's going to be pretty scary once he rotates around.
Yeah, and already pretty scary. Dardes knocked up, clean kill by the Bolts, and now getting aggressive. Great wall from Jake. Isolates Cuvo, but a great teleport from Cuvo. Gets him out of there. He's under the tier 2, and he's running away. Baskin's looking for more, but now you've dove too deep. The rest of the pressure is on, and the Warriors are going to turn one back.
Okay, I got to give Baskin credit because he did hit that shield, but Vote already made the rotation over and gave the hearts over to Cuvo. Healed him just enough to make sure he gets out. Then Baskin got completely baited. Unfortunate, because that was a great call to go for Dardes, right? Both relics were down. The AMC was a sitting duck, or a sitting bee in this case. But then Cuvo comes in, beautiful teleport, right when the wall was about to run out for Jake, and then the tail whip from Neil made sure that Jake couldn't hit the freeze or the carpet to put him down. And then unfortunately, once again, Baskin gets a little bit baited trying to finish that one. Good answer back from the Oni Warriors to make sure that Dardes doesn't die in vain. And now they're going to push that gold even further in their favor, sitting about 3.6k at the moment for the Oni Warriors.
It's a lot of money that's going to be in their favor. And while it feels like we have a little breathing room, I actually wouldn't mind looking back to see that first death that happened on the Dardes, specifically to see how he lost the beads, how he lost the Aegis. Saw, I believe, the Pillar of Agony from Venenu. and how that one ended up rolling out. So yeah, you can see it very simply. I think it's going to be about as easy as it could be. Freeze into damage into Hades. Sometimes, Charlie, it's just that easy.
I mean, that's funny because Jake just hit the root sprint, and then you could tell Darts is like, wait, no, I have to beat the freeze. I don't want to beat the root sprint. And then if I beat the freeze and the root sprint, then what do I have for the Pillar of Agony? You only get one pair of beads. Unfortunate for Dartes, and great play there by Awesome Jake. And of course, Ladsborough was also a part of that kill. But the Pyromancer has spawned back in, and the Oni Warriors are going to start this one up. Ven looks like he was trying to wrap around here. Doesn't quite have the gall to wrap around this far. We're seeing a Cubo wrap around.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to get something, maybe a little more. Jake, isolated, good wall, separates the damage from him. And that's going to allow him to get out of there. Vin, fishing for damage. Going to come up a little light on that one. Cubo really, really pushed for some kind of just insane gank. That could have potentially ended up happening. Unfortunately for them, nothing happened there. Cubo steals away a red buff. Ratatosker goes for the engage. No knockup going to be available there from Cubo, but it doesn't matter. Lasbra just gets deleted, and then Finn follows shortly thereafter. 2 clean kills for the Warriors in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, that was just a little bit too much. They don't even care about the Primal Fury anymore. It seems like the Oni Warriors are heading over to the right side of the map, and I don't think they're going for Pyromancer Gore. They've got a double ADC composition, plenty of damage on this side, a possible Fire Giant bait at the very least to see if the Olympus Bullets will step up. They got 23 seconds without Lasbra and even longer without Ven. But it looks like Basket does juke out the Stinger. That's pretty clutch.
That is actually massive for him, right? A lot of that tankiness going to survive. It is a 5v3. Maybe it's going to be a 5v2 here shortly. Jake is going to be slowed slightly, but it does not matter. Dartes with the autos, the CC there from the Warriors. 2 members of the Bolts alive, and still figure it's worth contesting the Fire Giant. Barra, Baskin hanging around. Baskin's going to be the main target for the Warriors. Dartes has turned his DPS over there. Vote keeping their DPS on the FG itself. Baskin half health. He's going to use his dash defensively. Lasbra's back. No ult available just yet. Fire Giant's getting low. Secured by the bolts. They take it away. Barra with the dash gets on out of there. Lasbra might lose his life, but they have 3 strong with the Fire Giant and a good disengage.
Wow, 112 damage from that ultimate from Barracuda. That was clutch. It was one of those situations where if it was just Barra, just turn and kill him. But because Lasbra had spawned back in, because Lasbra made it all the way over towards that Fire Giant, the rest of the Oni Warriors like, okay, we just got to burst in and get out. Did not work out, and now the Bolts get FG on 3. Baskin also did a great job of trying to stall out the DPS there. Didn't overcommit his life. You know, it's one of those positions where if you go too far and you just die, you do absolutely nothing, and they get the Fire Giant everywhere. But I think Baskin got some relics down, slowed the DPS of the Fire Giant just a little bit to make sure that Lasbra could get in, and then also make some room for Barracuda. Now the Bolts are going to have a little bit of gas in the tank. I was going to say, are they going for this Fury? The Oni Warriors probably feeling confident. They're still up in gold. That Fire Giant's not going to be too much of a deterrent. This Primal Fury is going to get pulled right about now.
You still have 5,000 gold in favor of the Warriors here, and they're going to try to use it. Baskin is getting melted down like it's nothing. Vote picks that one up easily. Stinger picked up by Dartes and might not even need it to take down Jake. Double kill for Vote, and they're going to keep on moving forward. Cubo kills off Barra. Lasbra forced to ult away. And Vin just hanging in mid lane. Might not be the Primal. Could be a lot more. Depends on where the Warriors want to push. It seems like the tier 2 on left is their target.
Yeah, it definitely didn't seem like they were too concerned about the Fire Giant on the waist of the Olympus Bolts. The gold lead was all they were really concerned about, and since it's so heavily in their favor, they're able to force fights at the Primal Fury. Notably, Ven did start split pushing for a bit, sort of left the team on an island and said, I'll be back when I'm level 20, and I can one-shot. Unfortunately, that means that no one's over here to defend this left side Phoenix. Jake could wall off, slow the DPS for a bit, but it still should go down as long as Dartes and Vogue can find some auto attacks. Left side bird down at 23 minutes. That's pretty early, especially with no Fire Giant.
Nika, meanwhile, pushing up mid-wave, takes the tier 1. Doesn't seem like the team is feeling as confident in their capabilities. Might have something to do with some of those health bars over there. Those pesky health bars always getting in the way. Instead, they'll fall back. That Primal Fury you had mentioned earlier, going to be a pretty easy pickup for the Warriors at this point. They extend their lead, 8,000 gold now. A couple of pings coming out, relatively deep. Lasbra in the jungle. Might get caught out looking for a speed steal. It's not spawned just yet, so he doesn't know that it is literally coming back up. That one's going to sting a little bit if he had stayed. Well, 2 more seconds, I don't know. With Neil there, a lot of trouble that could happen. Either way, it's a big back 3,000 gold here for Cuvo, 2,100. That is now being spent by Vote. Cuvo has to be able to survive to use it. There's a good stun. B's used. He's so low. And there's going to be the dash. Ratatosker trying to the transformation from Vin. He has to go in. No, he's falling away. Has to disengage. Cuvo, for the second time this game, has a miracle survival.
Yeah, unfortunate for Ven. I mean, if he's on Susano there's no way Cuvo gets out. You just got hit Typhoon. But the Rat has a little bit more of a smaller targeter, I suppose, and just not going to be able to confirm that one. I understand also that you want to be hotkeyed onto the Ratatoskers because it's a good engage and disengage, but if you're looking for a 1v1 in the jungle, there's pretty much no one better at the moment than turning into Cuvo Fred. But now it's time for the Oni Warriors to group up.
4-0-6, by the way.
He's got pretty much
My God.
upgraded the starter. Heartseeker's online. He's doing a lot of damage. But the Oni Warriors are going to group up on the right side of the map. I imagine trying to get that tier 2 tower because Fire Giant not going to be up for a little bit longer. Ven's FG runs out right about now. So the Olympus Bolts no longer will have that around any members. But it looks like still just going for the tier 2 tower over and right. And they'll be able to back up and set up for some form of a gank, some form of damage onto this Fire Giant. But someone's going to have to deal with the Fire Minions and left on the left side of the map for the Olympus Bolts. And because Lazra does have that global ultimate, I thought maybe he would be the one. But maybe they're going to send Baskin back just because the teleport is available. And Amaterasu also extremely fast. But again, Fire Giant not up for a couple seconds or so, 30. Doesn't look like the Bolts are going to step up just yet. They know the Oni Warriors are doing something cheeky.
And Baskin, unfortunately, is going to be the one who's the recipient of that one. Dardes,
they had no idea.
With the stinger, just burns him down. Yeah, it feels like they were fishing for something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Warriors were fishing for something, and they got the bait they needed. It was a chomp from Baskin. Might not be enough for a Phoenix push, Trelly. But if you're talking about, let's say, a Fire Giant in the next 10 seconds, it's going to spawn. Starting to feel a little more confident about that kind of pull, especially without an Amaterasu distracting Dardes the way that it did last time.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Bolts, Barracuda is not here to steal this one. He's over on the left side of the map. No one from the Bolts is going to be stepping up. You can see Ven and Jake are clearing the waves, but not heading towards that Fire Giant. So now the Oni Warriors will be able to confirm this one cleanly. And because they already have that left side Phoenix down, feel pretty confident. Maybe just pushing in the right side, grabbing the minions, and looking towards this right side Phoenix. They've got plenty of teamfight ultimate presence. Baskin's up in 3, though, so they will have a true 5v5.
Yeah. They are allowing time for backs. I was wondering, do they even have a defense here for the Bolts? Finally, everyone's regrouping. Left side Phoenix is about to respawn. Also had to give the shout out while it's still true. Warriors, insane amount of defense throughout this game. All 6 towers still standing 27 minutes in versus the one lonely tier 2 that the Bolts have. Left side Phoenix seems to be the target. An immediate respawn is what the Warriors are looking for here. A couple of autos should do it. Those backdoor protections make it a little tough. And that wall is going to cause some trouble as well, but not enough to be able to save it from the Bolts. And they're not looking for the disengage over there. Fire minions, something they have to deal with. Warriors playing a little safe. They've got a minion wave in mid. But it's been a while since they backed. Maybe going to save some of that aggression for the next push.
Yeah, they've got plenty of time now. They've got a solid 3 minutes of FG, so might as well back up, upgrade the last bit of these items if you can.
2,500 gold for Vote.
Yeah, he should be either getting a little bit of crit, a Silver Branch online. He's got options because he's got the Death Temper. I imagine the Silver Branch comes through for Vote, and it does. So that's going to be a little bit of extra DPS. 3-0-7 for Vote. 5-0-6 for Cuvo. I mean, the stat lines galore are looking clean. But still, undying are these carries and damage dealers. It's very difficult for the Olympus Bolt to try and win a fight when so much damage is coming through from the Oni Warriors.
You know, I'm starting to believe Dardes when he says that Cuvo just wakes up at 8 a.m. every day. Because this is a guy that wakes up at 8 a.m. style of performance. 5-0-6. As fun as it is to meme it, we have legitimately seen drastic differences in some of the teams, like the Leviathans, the Titans. Some of these teams show up at 11. and it is a different story than when they play at like
and
3 in the
I
afternoon.
imagine Cuvo doesn't even wake up groggy. He wakes up hyped, like giving
Yeah,
knuckle,
hyped. He's
giving
probably
knuckle touches all
hitting
around.
the gym or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, like
He just got back from the gym at 8, and he's going back again 2-a-days. But now it's time for the Olympus Bulls to show us what they could do underneath this Phoenix. Jake does have the Emperor's armor, as well as the Bracer and the Sprout. Those things will come in handy when stuck underneath the Phoenix. Everyone on your team should be getting the benefit of the Bracer. But that mid-tier 2 tower also goes down. And once again, the Oni Warriors can play patient because that left side Phoenix is down. Someone from the Bolts is going to have to go over and defend. Maybe because they're so far ahead, though, they don't have to wait for it. Looks like the pings come through, so maybe they'll say, hey, wait for those minions to go in. But it doesn't look like the case. Neil already taking this one up.
about a third HP, let's call it, on the Phoenix on right. Fire minions stacked up on left, actually getting some pretty good progress. If the Bolts don't deal with that, that's going to be free damage onto the Titan. Or free damage onto the Phoenix. It's a lose-lose scenario, it feels like, if somebody leaves here. Minion wave for the Warriors allows them to step in. It's just trying to figure out where they're going to engage. I guess more how they're going to engage. Right side Phoenix, half health. Dardes takes a couple shots. They've got healing, though, so they can keep this up for a good little bit, if they so please. Stinger's available. Tanks have to be careful. Cuvo's going in. Looks for the pull on a Vin. Vin pops the beads, but it might not be enough. What a great Pillar of Agony. Keeps them locked in, and they are able to do so much damage, but not quite kill off the Morgan. Instead, they get rid of Jake, and now they're burning through Basket like it's nothing. A double kill for Vote. Barra barely out of range, and it might not even be enough. Has to dash back to the fountain to stay alive. The Warriors getting low, though,
Huge.
and playing this so carefully. Triple kill for Vote. Cuvo gets shut down at the end, but it's cost too much to be able to be worthwhile for the Bolts. 4 down, and the Warriors are going to kill off the Titan, take game number 1.
Yeah, Barracuda, no more beads. It was close, and that was a massive Dark Omen from Ven. Marked 4 members. I thought if Lasper was going to be able to get to the back line, it would have been a bit of a stop there. But either way, a clean set there. Or I guess game number 1 from the Oni Warriors. Yeah. We already highlighted how much damage Vote was doing. We already highlighted how much damage Cubo was doing. It just seemed like no one was going to be able to stop either of them. Unfortunately for Dardes, he was kind of the first one to die in these engagements, right? He only died like twice up until that point, but you know, he was the only one the Olympus Bolts could really find pressure onto. The AMC in mid, a little bit of mobile. Besides that, the rest of the team was looking real solid.
Yeah, it was a lot of, like you said, like early fights from the Bolts. Maybe some that could have happened earlier, right, with the Ratatosker, but didn't. And then slowly those just kept getting turned on their head. The 2 quick succession kills were the, hey, we got the beads and Aegis off the B, and then we killed them while they were down. And then I think that was like some of the last couple of kills that we had seen for minutes at a time. What's the word? Swinging wind? There we go. For the Warriors. It's close enough to what the word I was trying to think of. Either way, they take game number 1 here, and we'll see if they can keep it up in game number 2, take down the Bolts for the first time in their franchise history, or if the Bolts keep things interesting here, push us to game number 3. All of that right after this.
Solo un rayo del sol cambia el tiempo en el reloj. Hoy mis deudas reciben perdón. Pago por el show. Me siento feliz porque.
Game number 1 of our first set of the day goes over to the Oni Warriors over the Olympus Bolts. And if you want to support the Oni Warriors, if you want to support the Olympus Bolts, or any of your favorite SPL teams out there, then make sure that you go to shop.smiteproleague.com and check out the cool jerseys that our friends over at Skulls have provided for all of our players and providing you, the fans at home. Not only can you go to shop.smiteproleague.com, you can also go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL and pick up any of these great jerseys. Once again, thank you so much to Skulls providing the jerseys for our teams and for our fans at home in Season 9 of the Smite Pro League. Game number 1 here for the Oni Warriors looked pretty clean for themselves. Started out with at least a good first blood for the Olympus Bolts over for Baskin in the solo lane, but from that point onwards, Mifflin, Oni Warriors able to find the team fights, and it's really just clear-cut combos. We talk about Sobek plucking into a Hunter, saw that multiple times. Susano for Cuvo Fred, setting up for his carries to really get the damage out there. At least one decent objective steal in the middle of that one for the Bolts to kind of slow things down for a moment, but by that point it was already too far gone for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Olympus Bolts, I think, were in a couple positions that game where I thought, wow, if this particular team fight goes well, they're going to be in a winning position. If this particular team fight goes well, another winning position. Namely, I think that one of the primary issues with the Olympus Bolts is their hesitation. We saw it in 2 key moments this match. That initial Gold Fury pull after they had found their pick, they're looking around the Gold Fury. I'm thinking to myself, wow, this wall's going to go crazy, right? Nobody on the Oni Warriors is going to be able to deal with the wall. All 5 members of the Olympus Bolts are stacked up on the Gold Fury, and what do? They just, like, walked away. And if you turn your back to a Sobek, he's going to catch whoever's straggling furthest behind and separate your whole team fight. And that's exactly what happens. The Olympus Bolts just showing a little bit too much caution when they were in the driver's seat. And then afterwards, as you said, I mean, it was clear-cut. The Oni Warriors in a very, very good position. Only one real mistake was around that Fire Giant, where I would argue that was more so on the Oni Warriors dropping the ball than the Olympus Bolts particularly making a phenomenal play. A great steal from Barracuda, to be sure. Difficult to find yourself in that position, but this is one where I think the Bolts, had they just been playing with a little bit more confidence, that game could have been much closer.
And as we look at the final stats there, 6-0 for Vote, 1-0-15 for Neomog. Got very active on that Sobek throughout the entirety of that game. Not quite 100% kill participation for the squad, but damn near close for him on the Sobek. And again, this is the debut for Phase 3 Sobek at the very least, so off to a strong start for this god. With how many were banned away, I mean, we were looking back and it was Kabrakan was taken away, Kepri, Ymir, Yamoja. And so the fact that Neil Ma is willing to go to a pick like this, a pick that we see so little of to begin with, have the kind of performance that he's had here, maybe not so much looking over at the damage numbers there, but the setup that he provided for the rest of his squad just shows that Neil Ma is not afraid to go back to the old stuff that apparently still works pretty well for him.
I mean, when I think of Neil Ma, I think of like Jingchen, Sobek, Ymir, and Bacchus. If it came out before 2014, Neil Ma's really, really good at those picks. So anytime he's able to bring that back into the current meta, I think the Oni Warriors will always have at least something comfortable in the support role. I want to see more from the Bolts, though. I want to see them play their own style. And it's almost prophetic what Dardes had said during his interview. The Bolts aren't playing their style. They're looking at other teams in the league and trying to do what they're doing. And I think exemplified no further than their first 2 selection in draft number 1, just taking away 2 of the Oni Warriors picks rather than leaning on things that I would associate more closely with the Bolts.
Well, we'll see if the Olympus Bolts can bounce it back in game number 2 as we jump into the picks and bans between the Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors, with the Bolts in this first pick slot. A lot of very potent picks available to him in that first grab there. Last time around, the Oni Warriors managed to grab Hades in the first pick. That then gave at least the Bolts the opportunity to take that Ymir Morrigan. But as the first couple of bans go through, immediate targets towards Cuvo Fred, which we saw this happen last time. There was, I believe, 7 assassin bans that were thrown out there before anything inevitably got picked up, and it was a Susano. That was for Cuvo Fred. Pele and Kabrakan, the next two. One more ban away for the Olympus Bolts. And in that first pick slot, a lot of power to be held, a lot of great picks, but also is a case of what do you not want to give over to the Oni Warriors? The Morrigan. Not going to want to pick it, not going to give it away.
So I would argue the Oni Warriors got a couple of picks in the previous draft that they would probably consider themselves to be, hey, we get this, we auto-win. I almost guarantee if you ask Nika, if you get Hades, how does it feel? Auto-win. If Dardas is on AMC, what happens? Auto-win. And in this position currently, so long as the Oni Warriors don't ban away from themselves, they're going to get at least one of those two picks. I am curious to see what the Bolts are vying for from here. I think it is likely they take eyes on the Hades. That would make pretty decent sense, and they do take the Hades for themselves. So Baskin should be able to establish a good deal of pressure regardless of the matchup. But they leave up in one of the instant win conditions for the Oni Warriors. They get their AMC, which is almost always flanked by the Cupid.
Yep. And with the Cupid there, a 6-0 performance from Vote in game number 1. See if he can reprise that once more in game number 2. A Moose and Cobb once again for Dardas in the mid. The Ymir notably still up, so the Olympus Bolts can grab that one for Jake if they want to keep it out of Neil Ma's hands. But didn't seem that Neil Ma was too concerned about losing the Ymir last time. Went with that Sobek, had some great setup for the team. Olympus Bolts have a couple of big decisions they have to make. Do they grab something for Barracuda early on? Last time in the top 3 it was an Ishtar. Do they grab something for Venenu with the Morgan off the table? What kind of picks do you think the Olympus Bolts can even really go for at this point?
Oh, man, it's hard to say. Something that could just really lock down these immobile hunters would go a long way, which is why I was surprised in Game 1 to see Lasbra lean towards the Ratatasker over the Thor. I think that walls are very strong here, so Ymir could fit very well, but Jake has been concerning me a little bit with his positioning in some of these team fights, and Ymir is a god that dictates perfection in positioning. It is a thin line you're walking between, hey, I'm far enough forward where I can throw up a wall and I'm destroying your entire team, or I'm far enough forward and I got displaced once and I can't move now, so I just die. And Jake has found himself on the latter portion of that dichotomy more often than not as of recent. So maybe getting him on something a little bit more consistent, something that can play a little bit further in that back line and help out the rest of the divers on your team could be something along those lines. If that Jing Shen is slotted for support, that's one that is a little bit more lenient in positioning. Oh, I got caught out. I've got 2 leaps and a CC immune ultimate that I can move while channeling plus HP 5. So I think Jing Shen a little bit more in the Bolt's wheelhouse here.
Yeah, I was just starting to wonder where Jake Xing Chen had gone, because it was such a staple pick for him back in the last couple of phases. As you mentioned, has decent mobility and ability to kind of get out of these dangerous situations. And also it's a double hunter on the other side, which Xing Chen works pretty well up against. But with the Xing Chen, it's coupled alongside of a Set for the Olympus Bolts and a Kepri as the final pick for the Oni Warriors. We jump into, at least now, the banning phase. This Set, we've been seeing Set kind of bounce between the jungle, between the mid. Do you think that this is a pick for Venenu, or do you think this Set's going over to Lasbra?
It's hard to say. I hope it's Ven, and I am not a Set mid believer per se. I much prefer seeing the more standard hunter mid or long range artillery mages, but when you're talking about jungles, especially into a draft like this from the Oni Warriors, you want junglers that have got some form of lockdowns, be it a structure or hard CC, and Set hasn't exactly got that. I want my jungler rotating through and putting a wall behind the AMC or hitting him with some sort of stun and buying some time for the rest of the team to rotate through. And the exact same thing for the Cupid. Set is a bit more reliant on the rest of his team. And as of now, the CC core of the Olympus Bolts, I think, doesn't exactly facilitate a Set jungle as well.
As the bans start up, quite a few still thrown towards the jungle, so it seems maybe the Oni Warriors don't fully believe that this Set is going over to Lasbra, as we see 4 assassin bans here. Camazotz, Ratatosker, Susano, and Mercury. But there's the Thor that you were mentioning in Game 1, the Thor that you were just mentioning here. Get some easy CC. That one going over for Cuvo Fred for the Warriors.
It might be my rose-tinted glasses. It very legitimately could be, but I think Thor is a top 3, top 4, top 5 jungler right now. There's no way you could tell me Thor is not powerful with damage on wall, and the damage could be 1 at max rank. It's just the ability to proc those those item passives is so strong. How he utilizes his ultimate, the amalgamation of buffs that he's been slowly receiving over the course of the last 8-9 months have finally added up to a point where I think Thor now has enough damage to compete with the rest of the cast. Beforehand, it was, OG assassins are getting a little bit outscaled because DPS from new assassins is just a little higher. The Kamazats of the world, the new Bastets, the Klinas, all kind of out DPS. Now that Thor's got one more resource, he has got strong utility, phenomenal mobility, and he's got the damage to keep up, which is why I'm surprised that we haven't seen him as highly prioritized as I would have expected going into 10-10. Glad to see the Oni Warriors take this one, and they've got okay matchup into some of these picks. If you can get beads offset, great. If Bastet doesn't have beads, phenomenal. Otherwise, Charybdis has great answers to a Thor dunk. Xingchen likely won't ever really get CC by it. Even Hades could just instant channel Pillars of Agony and then leap out immediately afterward. But Thor damage so incredibly high. I'm just excited to see what this god can do on the pro stage.
Then a Cthulhu for the last pick for the Oni Warriors to give themselves a massive pillar to jump in the middle of a team fight there, Descent to the Madness. And then kind of to fight up against it, the Charybdis, as you mentioned, and then Bastet also gets locked in for the Olympus Bolt. So this set does seem to be that it's going to be slotted over towards mid unless we see some weird shenanigans, and this Bastet goes somewhere completely unexpected at this point, though most likely over there for Lasper. So how do you kind of feel about this Bastet kind of jumping in here with all the assassins that got banned away, not too many still kind of up on the table at the end, especially after the Thor got taken? How do you feel about Bastet for the Bolts?
Bastet's okay. It's all right. It's a lot of damage. It certainly has burst potential. That's one answer to things like AMC or Cupid. If you want a DPS race, Bastet wins the majority of those, so long as they maintain a state of parity in Golden Experience. But looking at the Bolts draft top to bottom, 5-man core, this is a win incredibly hard very quickly or lose very hard very quickly. That's the vibe I get from this. This is not a composition that I think can stagnate the map. Whereas the Oni Warriors, they can either play aggressively through the early off the back of Thor dunks, or they can slow it down, wait to get to that team fight. They've got multiple avenues in. I've got a lot of faith in this Oni Warriors draft, and the Olympus Bolts, I think, is a little bit more volatile on how it's going to approach this game.
So a bit more of a slow bleed for the Oni Warriors, something they can take their time and kind of bide as long as they need to. Olympus Bolts got to hit the ground running as quickly as they can to see if they can take themselves into a Game 3 position. Remember, this is the first time in franchise history, if the Oni Warriors can find a win here, this will be their first time that they've ever beaten the Olympus Bolts. We'll see if they can do so here. Game number 2 between the Bolts and the Warriors kicks off right now with Gore and Trelly.
See what ends up happening here in game number 2, Trelly, as the Warriors had a pretty dominant game number 1. A couple of maybe stumbles early on, and those stumbles were specifically in mid lane. Now it feels like they're coming in maybe with a little bit of a vengeance. I'm excited to watch this one, specifically because I'm excited always whenever Thor gets locked in, right? I think it's always really fun to watch. You had heard them talking about it on the desk, but suddenly you've got walls that are going to be coming out of Cuvo, double taps, a lot more damage, big cinematic style ultimates. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I imagine so. This is what I was calling for in game number 1, from someone. In this case, Lasbro was picking the rap, but I was like, I still want to see the Thor, man. It's just fun to watch. And also, I think, as Mifflin highlighted on the desk, he seems pretty strong right now. We haven't had too much to back that up, but people have been playing him here and there. We're hopefully going to see a little bit more of that as the weeks and the Pro League continues. Yeah. But at the very least, come on, it's going to be some hype plays, right? It has to be.
And it's the fun, I think, of being able to come in, know that you're going to be impactful, I think, from Cuvo, right? And on the Susano, he wasn't not impactful. He was like 5-0-6 going
really
into the last
impactful.
Yeah, he was absolutely insane. Survived who knows how many times. Absolutely, I think, menace in the jungle there. But I also think that it comes down to the Bolts, right? This conversation about them as a team right now, where they're standing. Longest loss streak that they've actually ever been on since they've rebranded as the Bolts. Potentially the first time they've ever lost. It's a 9-0 win streak for them against the Warriors. And so this is the chance, potentially, for them to turn it around or keep that going if you're the Bolts. And it's all going to come down to this. You get a Cthulhu over in the solo lane. You've got the double assassin locked in here for the Bolts as well. And a surprising early skirmish. I mean, double tap. Good from Cuvo onto Vin. I don't know what the Warriors or the Bolts really expected out of that. Maybe a nice quick early first blood, but it's not going to happen here.
I just like the Cuvo. You could hear him laughing over the wall after the double tap came through. Either way. Yeah, I think the double assassin composition we've been seeing in mid jungle, from things like the Tartarus Titans, Paul Layers like running that. Now Lasbra and Ven going to be on the Bastet and the set. The Bast set, if you will. It doesn't seem like it's going to be...
I don't know if I will.
All right, well, you don't have to.
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
I already said it.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. I wish you would have gestured to me hey, don't. I will not, just in case. But I don't think it's going to come online too early, right? I don't think the clear is going to be that impactful, especially up against Thor and an AMC. But level 5, when they get access to their ultimates, I imagine Dart is going to have to watch his positioning. Same style as last game. We highlighted who can die on the Oni Warriors. Well, the AMC can die. As long as those relics are down, it's going to be pretty annoying to try and stay alive in that sense. But also the duo lane from the Bolts, the Xing Chen and the Charybdis, not going to bring too much pressure, not going to bring too much kill. But what it will bring is a lot of safety. I mean, both of these characters, the Charybdis with the Whirlpool, and Vote, wow, taking a lot of damage, but also dishing a lot back.
Yeah, Bara, just as low. Xing Chen from Jake here. Looked like he was going to get aggressive. Was worth noting, I was watching very carefully because we highlighted the different start the Warriors had last time around. This time I was watching it a lot more cautiously.
Yep.
Jungle solo start, Kivo Nika on the speed together.
Uh-huh.
And then it was Cupid and the AMC doing purple and then kind of splitting apart and letting the AMC get the red. So interesting dynamic for them. And ultimately, I mean, Neil is level 2 over Jake, so maybe that's the thing that they're separating them. You also get the Interceptor this time around for the Warriors. And so it feels like it's a nice little punch forward for them. No, sorry, it's on Jake. So they were able to secure that one.
Yeah, I think that this new age start is just a little bit of an adaptation to the supports running at purple buff.
Yeah.
if you're
you got to do something about it.
Yeah, essentially your support is useless for the first 30 seconds of the game because they have to run at the enemy support and just stand guard over buff, even with the Invader's Curse there. So now you're like, hey, I need help with my buffs, man. Like we're gonna send jungle over to speed, and then can you help me with purple? Can you help me with red? Maybe we'll piggyback off green buff. All sort of things you can start up here. So you can see Neilma and Vote set up at the purple buff that will not be spawning for quite some time. I was going to say they're a little bit early to the party in that regard. I don't think they're going to be able to invade that one this wave, possibly next wave. They could attempt to invade it, but take a look at Awesome Jake. Does have the Hog available as well as Neil, so don't think it's going to come into play too much as long as they're able to stick around with each other and stay around that buff. But Neilma does pluck in. Jake's got a bit of damage here. Doesn't take over to level 3, so I don't imagine any kill potential could come through. Maybe just trying to get some extra pressure in lane.
Oh, Lazarus over here. Maybe could look for a little more. Neil doesn't seem to be expecting it. Vote neither. Blinks forward from the Bolts. Oh, but just too late on the damage. They are here for the purple buff invade, though. Cuvo's rotating in. That's going to be enough pressure. They take one mini out of the jungle camp. Jake's still hanging around. If Neil can get over into this area, you mentioned the Hog would be very helpful for securing this. Otherwise, hanging around are the two junglers. There's going to be a wall. There's going to be a hammer. That's going to be secure. But the beads used by Cuvo.
Yeah, definitely don't think he had to use it, but probably just a smart call. Confirm the purple buff. That's the main thing. You can see the retreat there from Cuvo Fred afterwards. I want to see when Cuvo's going to take over level 5. It just happened. And take a look at Lasbra. That would be a level 3. That's a massive difference if you're looking for a fight in the jungle or for some gank opportunity. Just ticked over level 4, so still not going to be able to be
That's a long time.
Yeah, not going to be able to be too impactful on the map for quite some time. Whereas Cuvo's got access to Anvil of Dawn, has a fair bit of damage online with the tier 2 mace, and if you're looking at any of these targets without beads, certainly could be some sparks flying on the map. Either way, though, I think duo lane probably the best case to try and find a gank. Baskin does have the beads available, Pillar of Agony also available, so pretty easily would be able to live through that combo, but maybe just trying to force something out. You can see Cuvo was on the right side of the map. I was seeing if he was going to go for a ward, but possibly just dropping some ward vision to make sure that if that blue buff comes up, when it does, I should say, that Baskin's put a little bit of pressure on.
It has now been, well, should be soon, a level 5 there. There it is, for Lasbra. So maybe an opportunity It's still got a comfortable lead if you're Kivo. But I'm going to keep my eyes on this because, you mentioned the Anvil of Dawn, the semi-global presence that comes out of that. If I see Kivo hanging around the Gold Fury pit or the Fire Giant pit,
Oh, yeah.
it's a 50-50 as to whether or not he's looking for something there or if he's going up into the sky. And that's kind of the glory of it. You go over even towards where the Pyromancer is sitting, where the Oracles are. Suddenly, it's very easy to gank mid lane. And a nice little pickup there by Jake. Very, very tail into the ult. Is able to at least grab Neil. Lazra is back over on the left-hand side, this purple buff. They want pressure for the duo. And they're going to get pressure for the duo. Cuvo's over on right. Dardes is backing. Does not seem like there's going to be much of a mounted defense for this one. Hog's still up for Neil. He back to base, though, so there's no way they're going to defend that. It's a nice, successful invade on both purple and now the red buff. But there's the Anvil of Dawn. A great dunk comes down from Cuvo just a little late and is not able to secure the buff.
At the very least, you get Ven's beads there, and unfortunate for Neil, has not been able to sit in lane too long to use that Hog. Actually just ends up dropping it for some wards and potions at that point because you can't make use out of it. Wanted to try and help confirm the purple buff, but it's not going to be the case. Either way, though, beads down for Ven, right? So that opens up some doors for Cuvo Fred's next ultimate, or if Dardes is able to land a stinger, possibly some kill potential in that mid lane. Considering the way Ven's been playing this set, just run to farm and then go to back camps, run, and continue doing that. You don't want to sit in lane. You don't want to be boxing up against an AMC unless you're all inning looking for a fight. So I don't imagine Ven's going to be staying up too far anyways, but you just got to make sure your ward vision is clean, as you said. Fire Giant pit or Gold Fury pit. You could be making it over to mid lane, duo, or solo from that range. And that would be a pretty decent target there. I mean, Anvil of Dawn into Stinger, that pretty much guarantees that Ven's getting 100-0'd this early into the game.
I mean, hell, even that last ult was, entrance to the jungle in mid, right behind the tier 1 on the speed buff side. And dunks onto the far left side of the red buff and finds a stun. I mean, look, semi-global, it's maybe not as solid, not going to get you everywhere like a Chernobog or an Athena. But you're just going to cover a considerable amount of distance. Always just, I mean, you talk about ults, and, I was talking about it yesterday, Vote playing the ROM. Some that are just very fun to watch. Kind of like a stinger in mid lane onto Vin. They don't have the lockdown. And that set barely gets out of that one alive. And still has to play it cautiously, leave the wave behind, just to make sure nothing happens. But if you want to talk about cinematic ultimates, it's almost always going to be one of the top of the list is Anvil of Dawn.
Yeah, no doubt. Kivo just ticked over the cooldown as well. I was wondering if he's going to be able to ult onto Ven there. Not going to be the case, even with that such low HP. Awesome Jake. Take a little bit of poke, but still has access to the washing machine. Could have ulted if need be. And another thing, Dardes once again has picked up the ult, so it's back up. That stinger that was used on the Ven, not going to be the biggest deal. Cuvo off the mark with that ultimate, even if it did hit, wouldn't have mattered in the Whirlpool form. I just don't think ganking dual lane ever the call here with the draft that the Olympus Bolts have went for. Charybdis, Xing Chen, just a ton of safety. That's the whole reason I think they did draft this pick is neither of these picks die very much. Lasbra going to try to get the beads down from Dardes, but Ven's can take this one up. They can go for the kill.
The damage just so fast. Lasbra barely lives through it, but they burn through Dardes. Now maybe looking for some pressure elsewhere and seeing where they can find that one for them. But that showcases, in my mind, Trelly, some of the instant nature that two assassins can provide damage to.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, because I was like, okay, Lasbra's going for the gank. Probably he's going to get the beads down on Dardes. Then you remember, oh, wait, that's a set. Set can definitely tank up this tower in the process. Lasbra actually does the duty and decides to tank up the tower anyways for Ven, and there's just plenty of damage to output there. So now Dardes dies, loses the stinger, and the beads. So that tells me
three bad things that you just said.
And then here's the worst one.
Oh no,
they can
there's
do that.
a fourth?
They can do that all again in about 60 seconds or so. So I imagine Lasbra trying to put some more pressure on the mid lane. Make sure that Dardes does not free cast. That was the name of the game last game. They killed him twice. Maybe they can kill a couple more times this time around.
Well, try. I imagine.
That is
I think
that
that's
is
going
the
to be
key
the
word
biggest.
there.
Yeah, try We'll see how successful it is. Last time, very successful, at least in the one opportunity. It's going to be questionable. I also think, we roll it back to duo lane, 30 seconds prior, maybe not even a full 30. That Anvil of Dawn missing, I was going to joke about the fact that it still looks good when it
did
doesn't.
look cool,
It
even when
didn't
you
do
miss.
anything for him, but it looked really cool.
Yeah.
But seeing things like that, and that now being off cooldown, gives maybe an opening where it's like, okay, well, hey, wait, I'm set. I can play a little more aggressive now. Like, I've been getting outboxed by this guy on the other side. Maybe this is going to be the opportunity for them. And definitely, I think in the conversation right now for the Bolts to kind of lean on this early aggression and lean on the double assassin to make sure they can keep this pace.
Yeah, I've already got it in my head now. Baskin's going to make the Oli rotation over. He's got the Pillar of Agony, no beats for Dardez. As long as there's no Kepri nearby, should be another easy kill. Then he can go back to lane. You won't even be gone that long.
Those pesky Kepris.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Neil, just keep Neil away. Jake can be on zone. You don't even need him. Send Jake to just go be annoying with Neil and just make sure there's no Kepri
Ultimate if
nearby.
you have to. Just keep him out of here.
Yeah, just keep him as far away from mid lane. I mean, try to get something going. That's the name of the game here, because those beats aren't going to be down for long. I think Darda's positioning has been pretty on point because he plays the AMC a lot. You got to force something. And if he's going to stay underneath the tower, then just let Baskin's tank. He's a solo laner. He can do it.
And that's it's been this weird balance, right? Because like Hades builds have not been tanky and
No,
nature.
not at all.
They're like,
It's actually been all
okay,
damage.
Hey, thanks for like the Warlock staff. Like we get some health, and then thank God the Pillar of Agony gives us a ton of prots, and that you get the healing and kit, because otherwise you do not have anything to work with. And so we've seen that be this double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Where like you go in and you're bodying people, you feel invincible. And then sometimes you get hit by an AMC stinger, and none of that happens. And so, do you think that Baskin's like in a good scenario with this kind of team comp to get that work done, or do you think he's going to have it maybe turned on him too much?
I definitely think at the moment he's got a fair bit. He's a small lead. He's up against Cthulhu, so he doesn't have to worry about clear too much. He pretty much walks up, silences the wave threes, then goes, all right, you're going to be clearing for half an hour. It takes you like 12 autos to kill the big minion. I'm going to go steal all the farm and then continue to do that. So Baskin should be rotating into these fights a little bit ahead, whereas Vote and Dardez, they'll do a lot of damage to him late game, but they don't quite have that same power spike as long as Baskin's able to farm effectively. So I imagine he'll at least get some good value out of Pillar of Agony up until that point, but the double ADC comp, as you said, does get a little scary.
Later on, honestly, sometimes not even that late, because AMC, I think the way they played it, you get two things right, back to back, the AMC, the Cupid, that feel really good in game number one. Admittedly, that first Fire Giant that gets stolen by the Bolts doesn't get stolen if Dardez isn't distracted a little bit. And so all of a sudden, you're in this position where you can get maybe hyper aggressive if you're able to just both focus someone down. Might still take a little bit of time, right? Put it in the oven. But the Warriors like to play that style. Honestly, the fact that they've been getting aggressive now has been surprising, because they tend to like to let it gestate for a little bit, right? Just hang out for a little while and then jump into it.
It's because Kubo has been up for 4 hours.
He's ready to go, baby.
He's like, guys, I already have my
He's about to
pump."
run a marathon.
Yeah, I'm ready to play. That's probably what it is. He's just ready to get active. I hope that ultimate, the second it's off cooldown, I want to see him channeling it. He's got that diamond almost filled, and when it does fill up, I expect him to use it. So we'll have to keep our eyes on the junglers. As we said, Dardez without beads for another 100 seconds. Baskin does have the Book of Thoth completed, so what I not predicted but want to see could certainly happen. I imagine the fact that Lasbro and Ven just had a successful gank on their own means they could try to replicate that, but unfortunately, the bane of their existence, Neil Ma, has returned to the mid lane.
And maybe the bane of Neil's existence, Jake. You never know what could happen. Cuvo has to play it careful in the jungle. A lot of damage that's getting dumped into him.
Wow.
Barely makes it into the sky. And there's no tick damage to find the rest. It's going to be a little invade. Jake took just as much in mid. And so it is going to be, even though maybe not as successful as a kill for the Bolts, a very successful push out to make sure they TKO Cuvo, strip away some of the jungle.
Yeah, that was a really close kill, but Kuvo channels that Anvil of Dawn perfectly. I mean, if Huntress of Bask came through and the jump, definitely a kill. If Baskin rotates a second earlier, definitely a kill. But it all worked out, at least for the Oni Warriors, to make sure that Kuvo survives in that situation. And fortunately for Dardez, Cuvo sort of took the fire off him. Burbed, he's like, hey, my beads are up in 20 seconds. Thanks for stalling for me. Like, I appreciate that. Now I can walk out a little bit, and I don't need my guardian, you know, Neilma just sitting around me.
Guardian lobster.
Yeah, the guardian lobster. Everyone's got one. You know, they're always
I
there.
have a feel like that's like if you really like Red Lobster, that's you don't have a guardian angel. You've got a guardian buttered lobster.
And they just always watch over you, and what, they help you with your
Yeah,
meals?
and they make things taste good, probably.
Oh, so it would
Do
taste
you
like
like lobster?
I mean,
this is completely derailed. I'm sorry.
no, it's not. It makes sense because Neilma is a lobster. That all checks out.
And honestly, the butter on the back of that skin, it's like just the right amount of melted to look delicious.
Yeah, there is a moment where that could be a problem. Cubo did not get to hammer over the wall, though. Does
No.
have the beads, but this is going to be an engagement.
Yeah, he's stuck. Look at all that damage. 2 assassins and a clean kill onto the jungler. Now Neil just tries to escape. Scarab's blessing onto himself, but it just might not be enough. Or they might not just care. They're going to kill you once, they'll kill you twice, and it's a double kill for Vin.
Yeah, Barracuda making that rotation over. Also pretty sick. It looks like the Pyromancer is on the cards here for the Olympus Bolts. I wanted to see where Vote was headed, and it looks like trying to go to defend the Pyromancer. I honestly thought they might just go for the Gold Fury pull since they had the double ADC, but now they're blinking on Anik. It goes into the Descent into Madness.
Yeah, there's a knock-up onto Finn as well. He's got the damage, but might not have the health to survive that. No, turned around. Vote does get Baskin, and they pick up Lasbra on the tail end. Jake, a little low. Barra, half health going into a boxing match. Vote not hitting his autos. A little bit of damage from the mid lane, and Barra turns that one around. Vote, though, still able to pick up some of these kills on the fadeaway. Vin had to have died to a camp. What did he get killed by at the very end of that one? Either way, it is glorious for the Warriors now as they are 1 away from a deicide. All they need is a couple of hits, but no, Jake, the tier 2 tower doing its job, protecting him, and with Neil up, the Pyromancer, the whole thing this was for, goes to the Warriors.
Wow, after all that looked like such a clean fight for the Bolts there. Nika did have a huge ultimate, and Baskin dove the backline trying to get the beads off of Dardes. Successfully got the beads off of Dardes, but wasn't able to find that kill. Then Baskin runs away with 1 HP, says, oh, Nika's 1 HP. I'll devour souls here, get 1 kill before I head on out. And then the ADCs of the Oni Warriors were able to clean up there, both having 2 kills to their name at the moment, 4 total in favor of the Oni Warriors. Actually able to down a kill, but still, they got the Pyromancer, which was the big deal. That's what the Olympus Bolts were trying to confirm, and unfortunately just did not go their way. I think maybe either overestimated their damage or just really felt like they were able to kill through the fact that there were so many relics up. And that all starts from Cuvo. Unfortunate hammer. Didn't quite clear over the
over
Gold
the
Fury
wall.
pit. And then Jake's like, wait, this guy's got no escape. Can we just kill him? And they do. Cuvo came back in for that fight. That's how long that brawl just took.
I mean, it's so insane to think that it was right here around the mid camp. That's where the pressure starts off. You kill Cuvo. They killed Neil to start that off. Nika gets burned almost instantly around the Pyromancer when the teams rotate over there. But they trade out Baskin. Honestly, I think I missed it. Must have been a heart bomb. Maybe it was a harpy. I'm not even sure what picked up Vin on the fadeaway there. No matter what, Vote got a kill from the grave that made things even more worthwhile for them, plus the pick they got on the Lasbra. And just in the blink of an eye, suddenly the Warriors are, well, a little in the lead. I can't even tell. It's so close between these two teams. Might as well be dead even with all the way it's bouncing back. And so it's hovering 230, and then, yeah, +4. So it is going wave to wave.
+2.
Literally on either side of this one. +2 might be one of the lowest. No, I think we've seen +1.
Well, yeah, JMac has been keeping track. We're pretty close to seeing all the single-digit numbers. I don't know which ones we're missing. He's got them written down somewhere. Tweeted him. He'll tell you. Aspra, though, gets double-tapped and decides to jump in. Scarab's Blessing is going to be used on Akivo. I don't know.
Yes,
he is
you go
going in.
What a brave man, and of course it pays off. Gets the kill, hammers out. Does he have a stun? Does he have safety? Doesn't even need it. Nika's there to be the protector necessary for Cubo. What a mad lad, but he gets it done. That's what you get for being awake for 4 hours.
Yeah, that is. Those are the kind of plays. Take notes, chat. These are the kind of plays you can make when you wake up at 8 a.m. Cubo popping off there. And then the last part is so much damage. I was surprised that he actually jumped in after getting double tapped by Cubo there, but I guess the Scarab's Blessing gave Cubo some confidence. In the meantime, though, Barracuda able to get the tier 1 tower over and left. Gold Fury still available 15 minutes into this game. No one's really made a pass at it at this point. Doesn't quite have the burn, despite the fact that there's a ton of ADCs on the map. I guess it's more so the burst factor that both these teams are worried about. If Baskin rotates in, a fair bit of burst with Devour Souls, but besides that, not going to be an easy confirm on that Gold Fury, despite the amount of shred they have for these objectives, both teams. So it looks like at the moment the Olympus Bolts are going to take a small gold lead, but we're seeing a little bit of a grouping, and it's on the right side of the map, just going for an invade for the Oni Warriors, trying to get as much neutral farm as they can before we see any sort of engagement over on the left side of the map.
Part of me was wondering, I mean, look, it'd be brave, but if you heard like a Gold Fury, or they've got a lot of ward coverage from the Warriors, if there was a Gold Fury and they had everybody positioned over there, it could have been a very quick fire giant. 16 minutes? No, that's way too risky. I like what you said, the neutral farm, pick it up. Neil.
Oh my goodness.
Has to use the Scarab's Blessing on himself one more time. Will get proc. Jake gets burned down. Do they have the confirm to kill off Neil again? They do, so it's support for support and ult for ult there. Lasbra's in the back. Vin diving onto Dardes, trying to get some work done, and they're gonna get the work done. Baskin able to pick up two as well. Cuvo is gone. Nika is gone. Vote, you can follow him down to the grave. It's a deicide for the Bolts and a wide open field.
I mean, that just looked like trade support for support, right? It was awesome. Jake pulls in Neil. Neil Scarab's blessing himself. They both die, but then the Bolts handedly win that engagement, and they're not going for that Gold Fury anymore, Gore. You said 16 minutes might be a little early. 17 minutes, that looks much better for the Olympus Bolts when it's just Neilma to defend for the next 8 seconds or so. Cuvo's going to be up next, but he does not have access to Anvil of Dawn. It's going to be a Khepri attempt at a steal if he can even get here in time, because here comes the DPS from the Bolts, and it's burning fast.
You got to give him some credit, though. We've seen an obnoxious amount of Khepri steals so far this year. Way too late on any sort of damage, way too far on any sort of damage. Neil, I think appropriately valuing his life over the FG here. Has a level lead still over Jake, but now 5 Fire Giants on the back of the Bolts. The Warriors trying to get something done in mid. They go for Vin. Vin forced to use the Aegis to survive through that onslaught. Cuvo's getting low and is barely walking away from this one.
Yeah, I was looking at the Scarab's Blessing timer. Was not up. I imagine Neil would have dropped the ult, or maybe just had that calculated. That Cuvo was going to be just fine either way. Very close, and now the Olympus Bolts certainly in the driver's seat for this game. They grab the Pyromancer, Fire Giant on 5, as you said, and now it looks like grouping up for the Tier 1 tower in mid. That Gold Fury has not been touched. It was the Fire Giant before the Gold Fury even got dropped. And that's sort of what you can do off of a deicide at about 17 minutes into the game. Now finally, some grouping around this objective, the Gold Fury being looked at here. I don't imagine the Oni Warriors want to step up. But actually, Cuvo goes to the sky. Is he looking? Who's he looking for?
Yeah, he's going to land on Jake. Hammer should be able to secure that one. Vote's going to get credit for it. Fields of Love thrown out there as well. So a little fight back from the Warriors, at least in terms of trying to keep things under pace. In fact, they're going to start getting aggressive in mid. They are down now, 7,000 gold. Let's call it 6,000 as they start pushing through these towers.
Wow.
And they're going to try and kind of subvert, essentially, this Fire Giant from the Bolts, take a Tier 2 in mid, and open up a win condition.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of the issue I find with the early Fire Giants, is that it gives your team a false sense of we're at late game. That was a level 12 Xing Chen diving the backline. That's assuming that it was a level 20 Xing Chen, right? Awesome Jake makes those kind of plays often, but look at the carries of the Oni Warriors. I mean, a level 17 AMC stingers you. Yeah, you're probably going to die when it's 5 level differential. So just because the Fire Giant came through doesn't mean you can step up that far. The Olympus Bolts, though, aren't going to give up just yet. They've got Fire Giant for at least a couple more minutes, about 3. And it looks like they're going to group up over on the left side of the map, possibly looking for the Tier 2 Lasbra, though. One ability will do it. And he's going to take down Cuvo right on the opposite side.
I was wondering, looking at cooldowns, keeping like all of the mentality in check to see if Cuvo could do anything to turn that around. Maybe the team can try. Stinger thrown out onto Jake. Nika's rotated in. Stinger's going to be an easy pickup for Dardes. Maybe not. He's going to be able to scoop that up. So at least keep the cooldown on that low. Did it time out right before he picked it up? I don't think he got it.
I've been looking at the cooldown. I don't think he got it either. I think Jake stood there for the perfect amount of time to say, hey, if you try to grab this, I'm going to ult you, but also I'm really scared too because my HP is so low. Barracuda going to just walk out of the Fields of Love over on the left. The Oni Warriors really trying to stall out the last couple minutes of this Fire Giant. They want these towers to stay tall so that gold lead doesn't get any more massive.
Well, this is the other half of an early Fire Giant, right? It's like,
Yep.
okay, cool, you got it at 17 minutes. 3 of that is now gone. You've poked our tier 2 tower. Like, you're not looking at a Phoenix. Honestly, you're barely looking at the tier 2 right now with the way things are going. It's much easier for the Warriors to mount a defense despite about 6,000, a little under that now. 5,500 gold in the favor of the Bolts. Maybe they can even find another kill. A pick onto Jake would be massive. Hell, even a small TKO onto Jake would be massive just to get him out of the game. Take away some of the tanky nature for the Bolts to maybe dive onto these towers.
Yeah, it looks like that might be the last push the Olympus Bolts are able to put together with the tail end of this Fire Giant. They're able to grab some gold. Of course, the Gold Fury and the tier 1s are going to help out, but that mid-tier 2 hangs on with a sliver of HP. So now I'm thinking that the biggest differential here is certainly the XP department. Cuvo Fred, 3 levels behind Lasbra. Nika just about a level behind on the Cthulhu. That's not going to be a big deal. And everyone else pretty much a level behind throughout. Except for Vote, sitting 4 and 2 on this Cupid, has the kin size, has the Ferocious Executioner as well as that Odibo. I mean, once that Death's Temper comes through, this Cupid is going to be absolutely spreading. That's something the Olympus Bolts know all too well. So they're probably going to have to try and group up around this Fire Giant even before it spawns in, just to make sure the vision's down and Sue's able to step up. Taking a look at the relics, though, Cubo Fred doesn't have Aegis. Besides that, everything is ready and available for the Oni Warriors, as you would expect, because we haven't seen too much fighting in the past couple minutes. And I think smart for the Bolts. Get here early, wait to see who steps up, send Jake first. I mean, he's got a great ultimate to just displace or the knock-up to try and confirm some early damage before this Fire Giant spawns back in.
If they grab Neil early, before he can get the Scarab's Blessing down, it might be an easy pick onto the Capri. Might be an easy way to get rid of that ult.
I'm surprised he never gets beats. Like, Neil never gets beats, and he's almost always, like, the first target in these engagements. Like, not in this set, in every set. It's
yeah,
like
just in general.
Yeah.
Neil, look, he's very unselfish.
Yeah, he's like, I will die, but my team will look good while it's happening, so that's all I care about.
Well, they're trying to look good here. Hovering around 6,000 gold still, or at least trying to push up to that mark again for the Bolts. Fire Giants back on the map. This double assassin, look, you were talking about it, I think, yesterday when we were watching Paul play set in mid, wanting to see him get aggressive. Started in game number 2 versus the Warriors. Now, same thing, game number 2, Vin on this set. 5-1 and 3, lots of damage that's been coming out of it. Admittedly, still middle of the pack, but I think that's just because of how ridiculous some of these fights have been. A lot of pick potential between Lasbra and Venenu that the Bolts have been using very well to just kick off their engagement. I mean, leap in from one with a teleport in from the other. And most of the time, unfortunately, it's been on to Cuvo. And this Thor has not been able to really do much about it.
Yeah, I got my eyes on Lasbra, though. They took a 1v1 in the jungle last time. Lasbra definitely got the better end of it. And is here once again. Cuvo did not use the hammer, but I'm just watching to see if Lasbra catches out Cuvo right here with like a hammer down. Definitely going to blink in and look for the 1v1 basket, however, catches Neil's dash, and already going to be stuck in that pillar.
It's going to be a 2v2 in mid as well as a 3v2 over here. Cuvo's dead in mid. Neil barely able to get himself alive. Dardes is rotated over, but there's going to be body blocks too clean and makes it easy for him. Vote getting shredded in mid. The tier 2 putting in a little bit of work, and it might be enough. The shots are going to at least ward away Lasbra and Vin. So it's a 2-0 swing. The Bolts able to pick up 1 in mid, 1 on right. Still not enough pressure, though, to feel confident because of the health bars to start up the Fire Giant immediately.
Yeah, go for the retreat, back up, and then go for the pull onto the objective. Unfortunate for Cuvo. It seems like Lasbra really has his number at the moment, trying to follow him around in the jungle, see if his hammer's ever down, and then just take that 1v1. This time, though, Ven was actually able to confirm that kill because he was hiding over in the jungle. It looks like Nika teleports in, but this might be too little too late. Vote, the only one who can walk up in time. All right, never mind. They made it all the way up here, but it's burning fast.
What can they do? 3v5. Jake just burned down in the blink of an eye. Nika needs to be able to get this ult off. The Descent to Madness could go massive, and they do. It kills off Jake, but Nika burned down just as quickly. Gone is the solo laner for the Warriors. They keep the hope around the Fire Giant alive. Lasbra double tapped out by Cuvo. Starts this 3-4 health. The Bolts have to drop the objective, give way to the Warriors.
Yeah, looks like a solid defense there. Trading out Jake for Nika, definitely something the Bolts are fine with.
No way the Warriors go for it. Okay.
I was going to say, yeah, farm probably a little bit more important at the moment for the Oni Warriors. They're a little bit behind. I mean, not a little bit. They're quite behind gold-wise. The Oni Fury is up, though. So it could be something that the Warriors look to try and grab before. But it's because of the DPS the Bolts have, if they show their attention towards that Oni Fury for a second, any bit of vision on that side of the map is going to immediately let one of these teams start a pull onto the Fire Giant. So I think a smart call to just get the farm that's close by, you know, get the back camps, push out the waves, that sort of thing. But in the meantime, everyone on the Olympus Bolts except for Jake ticks over to level 20. That's going to be a pretty big power spike.
Yeah.
Cuvo, the only one on the Oni Warriors, who hasn't been able to make that same jump, except for, of course, Neil, who I don't even know if is going to be level 20 by the end of this game. It's just takes so long to farm. Jake actually just blinked into pretty much nothing. Does find the knockup, but now getting absolutely shredded once again.
Yeah, there's going to be the stun. Fields of Love, I mean, just burned down. And the Bolts are going to have to fight this 4v5. Has to be a miscommunication. Nobody there for Jake to help him out. So no matter what happens there, was not finding anything. Relic still down for vote, but Aegis going to be up in 20 seconds. Big opening for the Warriors, and they sense it. With the blood in the water, they go for the Fire Giant. It's already half health. There's going to be some aggression. Lasmer tries to go in, but gets deleted by Vote. Up into the sky goes Cuvo. Where does he want to go? Dunking down.
Baskin steals it!
And steal it away. Baskin does it all by himself. He's going to lose his life for it, and that's 3 down on the side of the Bolts, and it is just a chopping block at this point. Vote with a triple kill, 8-2-2, and the Cupid is massive.
I mean, when the Fire Giant gets stolen, you get out. That's the call, no matter what. When it gets stolen, you get out. But unfortunately, the Bolts start funneling in. Lasber goes in, gets picked. Ven follows up, gets picked. I mean, Baskin did the right call. Go in, die, that's it. You stole the FG, you stop the aggression. But now, the Oni Warriors have no one up for a solid 20 seconds before Lasber can join the fight. Definitely going to grab this Phoenix. I was going to say, if Jake gets picked, they could probably go for the end. They have plenty of damage with the double ADC composition. They're going to back up and grab that Oni Fury and possibly all the jungle from the Olympus Bolts.
Have to give them credit, though. That if that Fire Giant steal doesn't happen, and they still get those kills, the game's just done.
Oh, for sure.
So luckily, the Bolts keep themselves alive. 4 towers, by the way, still standing on the side of the Bolts. I mean, great on the Warriors. We mentioned it earlier, highlighted it, the win condition of knocking and opening up that Phoenix, now knocking down the mid-Phoenix. But you still got tier 1s in left and right. That Titan will be tanky if they don't deal with that. And now we're in such an awkward spot, Trilly. Normally, Fire Giant goes down, and one team, even if you maintain it on 3 people, feels like you can do something. Bera's got it, and that's it. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, the Charybdis is safe, but I don't know if the Bolts are going to be able to accomplish much with that. Meanwhile, most of the jungle bosses have been taken down. Pyromancer's still up if the Warriors want to go for that, but it's all towers, all gameplay. I mean, we're essentially reset back to like 15 minutes. And there's no chance for a Fire Giant to fight.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, though, is that look at the relics for the Oni Warriors. They used absolutely nothing.
Oh, my God.
Not a single thing. Where the Olympus Bolts, I mean, Ven's without relics for a minute. Baskin doesn't have beats for a minute. Lazarus beats are coming back up here, but the Warriors used absolutely nothing in that sense. At least the Olympus Bolts are able to grab the tier 2 over and left, use something with their Fire Giant buff on Bera. But besides that, it looks like the Warriors are just grouped up on right. They've got those Oni minions. They could pull the Pyromancer if they so choose, but smart here. I like this from the Bolts. Just walk over, grab the mid and tier 2. I mean, get some more gold at this point. You might as well. If it's a... Oh, no, Cuvo.
Oh, no, Cuvo might be in trouble. Look, they're going to get a tier 2 over and right, but they're getting a tier 2 in mid. Question is, who feels more confident here? And it is absolutely the Bolts. Backs coming in from the Warriors. Mid-Phoenix trying to be answered back. They do not have the same DPS that the other side does. And now Nika is in a 1v3. The team coming up shortly. And with the Descent into Madness knockups good, Bera might be losing that Fire Giant buff. Has to use the ult for the disengage vote. Trying so hard. Fields of Love comes out, trying to slow people down. CC immunity used by Jake, but that is going to be a slow Xing Chen. All they need is a little bit of lockdown. All they need is a little bit of time for the Bolts. Baskin and Lasbra into the backline, trying to find some big plays. There's a great revive onto Dardes. Keeps things going. Double kill once again for Vote. Lasbra half health. Vin low. Bera low. And the Warriors still walking down mid lane looking for the damage. They're going to maintain it. Nika takes a couple of hits. Has to fall back. Mid-Phoenix still not there. Fountain a lot closer for the Bolts. The Warriors are going to call off their aggression there. Look over towards right.
There's no way. With Nika this low, I don't think they can go for this Phoenix. It looks like they're going to heal up with some hearts in the meantime, but it's going to be a 4v3, and the Bolts have their Phoenix, the Bolts have the Well. Yeah, definitely the smart call just to retreat here. I will say Cuvo Fred finally hits level 20, but after getting collapsed on for like the 6th time in mid lane, you'd think at this point he's just like, I'm going to stick with you guys. Like, I'm tired. I'm tired of Ven and Lasbra just ratting me behind every corner, so I'm just going to stick with you guys. But now it's enhanced Fire Giant territory. After all of that, the Oni Warriors are still not ahead. I mean, it's still, like, they've just been climbing back that gold lead. They're still climbing back that gold lead. But still, that's not going to be enough to close up what the Olympus Bolts had built for themselves. So going in to this Fire Giant situation, enhanced Fire Giant situation, the Olympus Bolts should be able to get that mid Phoenix back up, push out the mid wave, and we're looking at a relatively even map state. I mean, gold-wise, XP-wise, itemization-wise, all pretty much looking fine. Main issue, though, is I'm looking at Dardas' relics.
Oh.
And it's a solid 70 seconds before anything is up. You better believe the Olympus Bolts know exactly when those relics come up. And I would imagine Baskin and Lasbra have a targeter right on Dardas' back.
Sounds like Neil has his work cut out
Oh,
for him,
yeah.
right? Not only keeping him alive, but for the rest of the team, maybe turning, CCing, keeping the dream going. Fire Giant's going to be landing here shortly. It is the Warriors with control over the pit right now. Last fight, you got to remember, around the Fire Giant kicks off with a numbers advantage for the Warriors because Jake steps out of position with no one from the Bolts around them. This time, they're just playing the DPS game. Half health on the Fire Giant, Cuvo. And a very similar nature. Has to heal up thanks to it. There's going to be Jake. Blink forward. Drops the Horrific. Gets the slows. But it's going to be a disengage from the Warriors, knowing that the DPS, for them, is way faster than what the Bolts have. So keeping themselves alive, safe, burning some relics. And now, you mentioned it, but only 10 seconds left for Dardas to get those beads and Aegis. A much safer fight for the Warriors.
Yeah, no doubt. We've seen it so many times where Neil uses the abduct defensively and gets chased down. I assumed that was the case, but Awesome Jake was not able to close gap with that blink. It's a little bit wasted, and now the enhanced Fire Giant once again started up by the Oni Warriors. Those relics are back up, and it looks like just a blink in from Nika. He's going to the back line.
Yeah, tries to get something done, is in the ult, looks for the knockout, finds the damage onto Baskin, who tried to separate the team fight, but does no such thing. Instead, it's going to be Lasbra, deep, trying to find Dardas. Scarab's Blessing, good, it keeps them alive. Nika getting burned down, but does it matter? They kill off Lasbra. They're going to kill off Nenu, but Vin is at least going to be able to answer back. It's a 3-for-4 trade. Nika and Vote, last two standing. Barra, the only one left alive on the Bolts. Barra might be looking for a little bit. He can smell the blood in the water. With that Phoenix respawned in mid, I think I know where the Warriors are going. Maybe to get
do they think he's
here.
weaker?
And there's what he's going to do. Barra steps forward. Barra finds one, and he's going to keep on going. Whirlpool form a little closer, but Nika with a dash gets on out of there. Last man standing for both of them. And Barra looks better from it.
I'm amazed at that play that the Oni Warriors just made. Did they think he was one shot? Like, this is a 33-minute ADC. Barra wins that fight with his eyes closed. Like, they were both one shot. I don't understand.
No
He's got
way.
Death's Embrace.
No way. And look at the timers for the respawn. I mean, everyone's going to be back in 10 seconds.
Oh, he's
Barra
on the way, though.
Is making the play for
He's
the
on
Fire
a ward.
Giant. Yeah,
Nika
he's
knows.
dancing on a ward. Nika can see this happening. Barra versus the Cthulhu. Who's going to be able to find this Fire Giant? Or will it be exactly this? Nothing happening from either side. The respawns from the Bolts get them here a little faster. Nika still hanging around. Ward coverage, good. Neil showing up to the fight. The burn is there. The Warriors trying to go for the fight. Secure is the name of the game, and who can get this FG? Bubble popped on Neil. Fire Giant getting lower, but dropped by the Bolts. What a wild last couple of minutes this has been.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a brawl to end them all. Venenu and Lasbra are hiding in the fog, and Nika's well aware of this fact. Once again, we're in the same position, but this time all relics are down for just about everyone. You got some relics here and there. Barra held on everything. That's pretty much the...
And he got those kills.
Yeah,
absolutely insane.
That's pretty much the shining ray of hope here for the Olympus Bolts, is the fact that Barracuda did not die and kept both relics in the process. The Oni Warriors, though, seem to be taking the map positioning, trying to get in the spot to make a pull onto the enhanced fighter. But look at the wraparound Lasbra. So deep in the jungle. One wrong move here, and it looks like either one of these teams is looking to engage. But it's going to be the old dance of, you know, who's going to wrap around, who's going to step up first. Usually it's been Neil. getting blinked on by Jake. Last time, nothing came from it. Will Awesome Jake be able to find the same sort of initiation? We'll have to see. EFG once again picked up, I imagine. Immediately dropped once again.
Yeah, this is bait through and through, right? That was the fishing line. See anybody going to take a bite down. Keep your eyes on Jake. That blink is up. It has been both helpful and detrimental to the Bolts. Depends on how it gets used and what happens afterward. He's got his bubble up as well. So you have to imagine that's going to be very helpful if he does decide to go in alongside that ult. Trelly, I mean, this one, in the blink of an eye, a fight could start. In the blink of an eye, the fight could be finished.
As we've seen.
I don't know. I mean, for either of these teams, who wants it and who's going to start it? Honestly, it's been Jake. What an insane amount of damage from Vin onto Cuvo. Luckily, you've got Vote, so there's going to be some healing in the backline for you. The Pyromancer started up Bolts. If you're talking about get gold and keep gold, they've got more of it in the pockets now. But we're already starting to look at full build for a lot of these players. Couple of backs channeled, so the Bolt's not looking for the fight right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Baskin blink to the back line and not even get an ability off. Like, that's how much damage is on the side of the Oni Warriors. But, of course, the same thing happens when Ven, Lasbra, and the rest of the team just get to the back line. So it's just a dangerous game to be playing at this point. Once again, Enhanced Fire Giant picked up and dropped. This is a risky call for Cubo. Not even, like, the poke is always solid, but the second that hammer is down, we've seen the Bolts just absolutely dive towards the back line. Aegis will not save you up against this double assassin composition, but at least Ven's going to get a little bit poked out in the meantime. Baskin going to help heal that one up. Enhanced Fire Giant about 40%. Now Nika goes in.
Yeah, Nika up in the Descent into Madness. You had mentioned the relics earlier. They're all back up. So everybody feeling a little more confident this time around.
Just cancel it.
Fire Giant's going to fall down.
Yep,
Descent into Madness gone. That's a massive team fight ultimate from the Warriors stripped away. The Bolts have to feel happy about that. But again, relic situation, Trelly, it's feeling a lot better than it did about a minute ago. Everybody has theirs back up, but with Nika missing the ult, feels like that might be the advantage for the Bolts.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the call was, hey, I'm just going to ult zone them off. We'll get EFG. And then immediately the team was like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So Nika's like, but okay, I'll cancel my ult. And then hopefully it comes back off cooldown. Now Barracuda going to be tanking up the Enhanced Fire Giant. I still have my eyes on Lasper, though. Look at this wraparound. He's already at the back camps. One mistake from either one of these teams could be the Enhanced Fire Giant going down. Could be the game.
Cubo, you got to be careful over there. Those 1v1s have not treated you kindly. Luckily, it is just enough damage actually returned. Cubo, the one in the lead this time with that Heartseeker, now has enough to make Lasbra regret it. Lasbra stays in the fight, is looking for the wraparound still. There's the ult from Jake, not going to be able to find anybody, but health bars low on Vote and low on Dart as Vin able to pick up one. Baskin picks up the other. Cuvo is able to find one in retaliation, but three are gone on the Warriors. It is a 2v4, and now with Nika running for his life, they're going to make it Cuvo versus the world. Phoenix exposed in mid. Vin, Baskin, all still pushing forward. Jake, Barra joining the fray. This should be very easily the Phoenix, and it might as well just be the game. Cubo gonna try to heal up, but all he has is a wall, a hammer, and a prayer to live on. A little bit of damage here and there, but it is not enough to stop the Bolts. They're gonna push us to game number 3 and keep things interesting this set.
Yeah, you've said it before. The Oni Warriors have not been able to take on the Bolts yet. They take game number 1, but game number 3 is where we're headed now. Cubo Fred with a little bit of HP trying to keep that one alive. All off the back of what I assume was a little bit of a mistake in the comms, right? The Enhanced Fire Giant gets to about 40%.
Yep.
Nika goes up into the Send to Madness, the best team fight tool the Oni Warriors really have. And then unfortunately, Jake blinks in. You see Vote, and doesn't want to use any relics, dashes away, but then Baskin gets a massive ult, gets beads and Aegis from Dardes and Vote. They grouped up a little bit too much. After that, it was just clean sailing. That's not the word. Smooth sailing. There it is for the Olympus
clean. You don't
Bowl.
know. I mean, maybe not with like the salt water, but they might be fine.
Yeah, at the very least, it was a clean fight for them, and they were sailing just fine over the Oni Warriors.
I mean, just smoothly floating over. But not for the entire duration of the game.
Not at all.
Again, like it felt like a little dig, but like there were times that I saw Jake blink in and it was thumbs up, and there were times that he blinked in and just died, and the rest of the Bolts are in mid. Like there was no one there to help him. Almost maybe some misplays for the Bolts, but the Warriors weren't able to answer back, at least in those occasions. So we're tied up 1-1. The Bolts keep things interesting. Can they keep their streak against the Warriors alive? Well, I guess we'll have to find out right after this.
Sunday, 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 see the Titans take on the Scarabs. Blood feud, 1 p.m. Titans, Cyclone out, Stewart in. Here's what they had to say.
We got a grudge match
You
against...
want to kill those guys.
Yeah, we got a grudge match against Stu this weekend. That's all I'm saying.
We hate that guy now.
Ooh, that one stings. Is it getting hot in here or what? The Solar Scarabs, Hurricane, back in the SPL. Hardcore, ATK. That's your attack, damage, killer. A blood feud for the ages. Titans versus Scarabs, 1 p.m. Sunday. Blood feud.
There's nothing wrong with that. Don't have to be an acrobat. I wouldn't mind it. Should I find it? There's nothing wrong with that. Trippy and we all lose track. I wouldn't mind it. If I find it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Welcome back to the SMITE Pro League, a game number 2 that looked so handily in favor of the Olympus Bolts. Was going pretty well for a while, and then a little bit of a stumble in the mid-game. A Fire Giant near steal, still kind of stolen back then by the Bolts, and then we kind of get this delay of a game for a little while. Mifflin, it started out this game red hot for the Olympus Bolts. I mean, they had a 8,000 goal lead going into a Fire Giant, and all of a sudden this Fire Giant, they started it. They lost the team fight. They said, okay, we need to get out of this Fire Giant. The Oni Warriors pick the Fire Giant up, and then, well, Baskin steals it away. But even then, basically everybody on the Bolts died and ends up delaying this game for about another 10, 15 minutes of play.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of plays there, and I was almost going to say it. Had the Bolts lost, I would have almost left that entirely at the feet of Jake, because there are a couple of plays around the Fire Giant where you're like 7,000 gold up, and Jake just walks in and dies. And I'm thinking to myself, man, wish you didn't do that. I'm sure your team would have wished you didn't do that. But fortunately, a couple of heroic individual plays eventually lined up. Baskin in particular, I think, steps up massive for his team. That Fire Giant steal, phenomenal. Some team fights go his way as well. And it does eventually lead to a Bolts win. But I'd argue with the lead the Bolts had at the 20-minute mark, kind of crazy that it took another 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, game definitely went on a lot longer than expected through. 6-1 for Barracuda, though, at the end. 9-3 for Venenu. Just about everybody able to get their hands in the kill column, at least aside from Jake and from Neil. Nothing for those guys. 12-4 for Vote, though. And I think that's a story to be said, is that even despite the fact that the Warriors were down the entire game, in that surge where the Warriors were able to fight back, Vote is finding constant doubles, triple kills throughout all of these team fights, really keeping that team alive. Because, I mean, every time we looked up at Nika was dying. I mean, he goes up in a sense of the madness, and then his HP just very quickly fades away.
I mean, that's what Charybdis is built for, right? Charybdis might be one of the most uniquely good hunters at dealing with Cthulhu, so great from Barracuda to find that god, and a great performance from Barracuda as well. I forgot to bring him up, but my man was a pillar of consistency for his team. Phenomenal damage output, great positioning in those team fights. Really liked what I saw from the veteran.
Yeah, with that, the Olympus Bolts are able to bring us into a game number 3 now. The Olympus Bolts still waiting to try and find their second win so far this phase. They've only been able to find the one over the Solar Scarabs earlier on. If they can find a win over against the current number 1 seed, would be a massive upset for the Olympus Bolts. Would be a massive upset against the Oni Warriors, who are still trying to hold their their spot at the top, I should say. We'll jump into picks and bans for game number 3 to see what all happens, what kind of adjustments do need to be made through, because as far as the play on field, aside from the blunder around Fire Giant, it felt like the Olympus Bolts had a fairly strong composition. They were able to play it really well. I mean, you called it perfectly. They've got to hit the ground running, and the Olympus Bolts did. They built up a massive lead, just took one little stumble, and then an extra 20 or so minutes of play to get there. Do you think for the Bolts that compositionally they need to change around, or do you think it's just execution around the objective more than anything?
I think it's going to be pretty difficult to get the same composition again from second pick position, but I think that getting Jake back on things like the Jing Chen could go very, very well. Getting Nika off the Hades, or getting Baskin, I suppose, off the Hades this time around, since you're in second pick, getting Nika off. Very, very smart as well. I'm keeping my eyes, as you said, on the objective play, because that is generally where the stumbles started to develop for the Bolts. It was, hey, why aren't we sticking to the Fire Giant? Even in those individual plays where Jake goes in on his own and falls down, if the Bolts just stick to the objective, they probably just get it and get out. But instead, they try and step up, peel out for Jake, and it costs them a couple of these engagements, even with the fights going evenly. Probably don't want those fights to go so even when you're playing with a lead, as the Bolts were. So play on field, I think, certainly important. But getting this aggressive style draft, I think, really helps the Bolts in a time where you are struggling to figure out how you want to approach the macro. The game simplifies when you have a W key draft. It is so much easier to execute on that strategy because it's a much simpler strategy, and it is one that I think will serve the Bolts very well.
As the first bans are coming through, Pele, Kabrakan, Yamoja, doesn't seem any changes for the Warriors as far as their bans have been concerned. Hades, now going to be taken out of play entirely for this final game. Daji will once again not see the light of day against the Oni Warriors. A difficult decision by the Bolts, really pondering on what their final ban could be. The Morgan, if you want to take that one away from Dardes, not allow him to get that kind of a pick. Hunt Bats is an option if you want to take that from Cuvo Fred. But it will be the Morgan take it away. And I gotta say, Mifflin, watching the meta kind of develop in the week to week, it feels like every time we get so close to a burst mage meta, these very heavy, secure style of mages that go around these objectives, we almost always somehow loop back to getting to more of these double hunter kind of fight ups around the objectives. We see the Warriors once again grab Amuz and Cobb.
I mean, the truth of it is, Amuz and Cobb's a better mage than the majority of the mages. When you talk about just burst damage, Stinger plus Swarm of Bees is beating out, in so far as speed of damage dealt, just about every single mage. And then you get to lean back on the fact that your auto attacks are still very good. Your structure siege is very good. Your ability to deal with neutral objectives is still very good, which is why we see Amuz and Cobb so highly prioritized. And it does open the door to double hunter compositions, which the Oni Warriors have always been very likely to go towards. The Bolt's in a position now where if they don't take Cupid in these two picks, it's pretty likely the Oni Warriors will. So we'll see whether or not Barracuda is willing to go towards that god. Does put a lot more emphasis on your laning phase. When you've locked in Cupid, that is one of your win conditions. You want to play aggressively through the long lane. You generally get a little bit more assistance from your support with that style of pick as well. Jake has stricken me as a player that is more willing to play in that mid 3v3 than he is to play in the 2v2 and duo, which is surprising. The Bolts do decide to leave the Cupid available. We'll see whether or not the Oni Warriors want it. The Warriors are in a position now where they can either take the Cupid and it's just their standard bread and butter, or they could potentially look towards taking Charybdis for themselves, which was very strong for the Bolts and still does work very well with this Warrior style of draft.
Because it's been banned away so often and now left open, Hun Bats in the top 3 for the Oni Warriors, and then Cupid, as you mentioned, alongside that one. So to the Olympus Bolts, Charybdis still available if Barracuda wants to go that way. Still plenty of other hunters out on the table. That's maybe not the one that I was expecting to kind of pop out here for Barracuda. Freya locked in for the Olympus Bolts. And how does Freya kind of match up into this comp that the Oni Warriors are running against it?
Well, you've got really good boxing potential. If either of those hunters are ever isolated in a late game team fight, Freya doesn't often lose those battles. Very safe as well. Valkyrie's Discretion has a direct answer to Fields of Love. Pretty decent. Even on Amuz and Cobb Stinger, you could go up into the air regardless. That cripple doesn't work against Valkyrie's Discretion, so Freya decent in that regard as well. Pretty decent reactions could lead to some avoided Fear No Evils. I think Freya has a solid home in the meta as of now. The only weakness of Freya being, and it used to be just the entirety of the early game, now it's a little bit more so just the first 3 levels, her clear is very weak. Freya needs the entirety of her kit before she's able to operate, whereas gods like Cupid, it feels like at level 2, you've got the majority of his viability available. Once you've got Flutter and Heart Bomb, you're able to get active on the map, which is very important to the pacing of the game in 9-10. So much neutral farm around that duo lane, and you gotta fight for it. It's all contestable farm. Cupid fights a little bit earlier than Freya.
Second wave of bans now complete. Cthulhu and Kepri banned away by the Olympus Bolts. Ratatosker and Odin actually banned by the Oni Warriors. We have seen that Baskin has been willing to go towards the Odin. When you look at the double hunters that the Warriors have drafted, Odin might be a pretty good answer. The Bolts are going to go back to this Basset. They picked it up in game 2, and they're grabbing it one more time for Lazarus. So the double assassin between the mid-jungle combination, which just leaves what I can only imagine would be Baskin as the 10th counter pick. And for a solo laner, having kind of a whole look at here, what are maybe some things that kind of come to your mind for Baskin?
Well, if history is an indicator, I suppose Amaterasu, right? That might be one. Looking at the initiation of the Bolts as it stands, having another just AoE CC could go a long way. But Guan Yu's really strong still. Fablest Hoop's still really strong as well. Cavalry Charge would be that initiation that I'm asking for, and it has great answers to the AoE CC of the Oni Warriors. Fear No Evil doesn't peel Guan Yu off. Fields of Love doesn't peel Guan Yu off, so could potentially be looking towards that pick. Does struggle a little bit in the laning phase up against things like Bellona. Her sustain, very powerful. She'll likely get a bit more control around those Totem Akus. Has slightly better early rotations. So it is the Amaterasu locked in. Helps you out around those neutral objectives. But this is a composition now from the Olympus Bolts that is going to struggle a whole lot in dealing with permanent structures, permanent objectives. Towers, Phoenixes, it's going to be very difficult to siege those with this draft because you haven't got that standard hunter. Best DPS on structure is likely going to be Set, and if Set's hitting the structure, you probably already just won the team fight.
So with that Alma locked in, then the Sobek Bologna on the opposite side. Feels like for Bologna, this is a composition that she might actually enjoy going into. I mean, Freya doesn't like being disarmed. That shuts down potentially 2 full abilities of a rotation of Kid out there. Set going to be slowed down a little bit. So for the Oni Warriors, it feels like at least kind of their early game in a couple of different lanes has some decent pressure. Sobek, Cupid, we talked about that before. Amuzing Cobb and mid going to do just fine, even Bologna. So for the Olympus Bolts, is there a place at least where Labs can go to try and establish some pressure to try and get at least one of these lanes moving for his team?
Yeah, go jump on an AMC. You can ask me this question as many times as you want. Where is a jungler going to put his attention? If an AMC is on the team, go there. Get on that guy. He doesn't have any way to deal with any form of CC, doesn't have any way to deal with any of these structures either. AMC is a phenomenal target for every single jungler at every single level of play. I don't care if you're in a casual match, if you're in a ranked game, or if you're playing at the highest level in the SPL. Jump on an AMC in the early game.
So AMC the target, at least for Labs, or potentially for the Olympus Bolts. And maybe for the Oni Warriors, we'll see if they can bring it back, as it's time for game number 3. Who's going to come out on top? Will it be the Bolts? Will it be the Warriors? We can only find that out by taking it over to Gore and Trelly for game 3.
And I'm excited for this one again. So much on the line between these two teams. Bolts win, and they have a 10-0 win streak over the Warriors. The Warriors win, they break that win streak. And of course, for the Bolts, it's important when you look at the standings. Warriors number 1 right now overall. If they get this, 6-1 feels really solid there. If you're the Bolts, you just get to separate yourselves from the Scarabs and the Valkyries for a few moments. It feels like a lot of weight on this game.
Yeah, I would say so, but I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that everyone's saying ADCs are broken, Hunters in particular, and the Bolts have none of them. I mean, like, the Warriors have 2. I see
you've got the
I see
AMC
a
there.
Freya. Like, that's okay, I guess,
Cupid.
but you know, we'll have to see how that ends up going. The AMC Cupid has been very strong for the Warriors.
Yep.
You know, didn't work out last game, but still did tons of damage and was able to find lots of kills in the process. So we'll have to see how that works out for him.
Well, we'll find out here in game number 3. Again, a lot of fun pressure that can exist here. And I'm really excited
Aw, I
to
thought I
see.
was gonna do the
You
thing.
thought you were going to get the infinite
Yeah.
mirror. No, unfortunate for you. There's gameplay there, Trelly. And that's what we're here for, to watch how this shakes out. Double Assassin back. Again, this is the same start we saw last time. Might be some aggression. Blink. Immediately used by Jake.
Did Neil
Now
level
gets
his
him out of
pluck,
there.
though? I have to know. If he, like, saw Jake there and was like, guys, I'm going to pluck. He didn't put a level in. Patience. We love that from Neil Ma. I was going to say, like, Jake was in range of the possible pluck into death combo. Of course, Jake could have just leveled his jump in that sense, too. But I was curious if that would mess up their clear in the early with Neil Ma getting pluck. He didn't put a point in, though, so should be able to get Sickening Strike when he wants to go for a little bit of aggression. But here we go. Our favorite part of the game. The old support ring around the rosy, where just some damage gets done and really no one accomplishes anything.
You know how we used to talk about, like, solo lane, you'd go over there, and, like, at level 7 or so, when no ults are available, it's kind of like 2 beefy warriors just smacking each other a lot of the time?
He did get
That's
plucked.
what this has been. He did go for his pluck. Unfortunately, missed the Jake part of it. Did hit a mini. Doesn't seem like it's going to be too bad for him. Here's the thing I'm going to ask you, Trelly. And normally we've seen this. The hog pickup super early on. Way easier to kill the first spawn of Jungle Kings,
yeah.
right? That was added a few patches ago. It's been here since midseason. That's fine. It almost feels like if we don't see it used by the second buff, it almost isn't useful anymore, right? Like, I mean, we even saw Neil, I think it was last game, sell it in order to get something else. Speaking of something else, right now they're looking for a little bit of damage onto Barra. Burning through the health pots now. Not quite enough for the Warriors to get the kill.
Yeah, I think that the hog is simply useful just to have, just because you know if you're Neil Ma and Jake, you're immediately checking.
Yeah, if they don't have it, you can just stay there
Yeah.
and be at 50-50.
Exactly. You're checking, you're saying, oh, they have it. Okay, now I'm going to either leave or take the minis or just waste time. But because they have it, it's at least giving that peace of mind, and the opposite of saying, okay, we probably can't invade because this is available. Even if it's like, we can outburst it, you know, that's usually not the case. It's probably just like, okay, they have it, let's just not invade, let's not get too aggressive around these camps, or let's send a jungler over just in case to deal with that hog. So I imagine that's the reason. Just peace of mind knowing that you shouldn't be getting invaded as long as you have that in your consumable slot.
This is going to be Of all the segues to end all segues, maybe.
All right.
Dardas is using a different AMC skin this game than he was using last time. It threw me off. I'm so used to seeing the abilities he's been using. As you can see there, rocking it, having some mad scientist vibes around the honey. But it is the AMC versus the set. And last time we got to see, and it kind of is, it falls into one of two categories. If ult for Dardas, then throw it out there and probably beat him down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's two assassins. You're probably just going to get shredded. It feels like this is going to be very... I mean, it's the exact same two assassins, right? It feels like he's going to have to be very, very cautious.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that the Olympus Bolts have split up their damage a little bit in the sense of Lasbro and Van are going to take care of the physical. And, of course, Barracuda going to take care of the magical on this Freya. And it's not one of those situations where you can just stack Fizzdy and say, I'll deal with the jungle in the mid and Barrack and free cast. That's a Freya. If Barracuda gets online, it's going to be very scary to try and go for that one. Oh my goodness, that was so clutch. Jake had Hog, but Neil plucked him away. Make sure he couldn't use it. Lasbro, though, on the way over.
Yeah, the whoop.
I think that pluck might be the death of Neil. Going down slow, though.
Yeah, tries to get out of here. Tries to do what he can with a knock-up. He walks away. What a play from Neil. And now, with a little bit of assistance from Cuvo, the leaps, the dashes, they're all good.
Wow.
Oh, and the Warriors get out of there.
Interceptor is OP. That's what I've decided. The HP 5 there from Neil Ma, keeping him alive. Probably a health pod as well, working overtime. The amount of regen, just keeping Neil from going down there is absurd. And also just a great play. I got to give Neil double props, because not only did he not give up in a situation like where he's surrounded by 3 and he's probably dead, did not give up on the escape, but also knocked up Jake to get him away from the Hog, and then plucked him again to get him away from the Hog, making sure that the Oni Warriors are able to confirm that purple buff and get some more pressure, putting Barracuda on this very scary late game character behind. Freya's not going to get access to that ultimate for a bit. Possibly some more aggression in the lane.
Yeah, it gives them a little bit of opportunity, maybe some wiggle room to work with. Blinks back up for Jake. Soon behind could be interesting. With the lack of Khepri now, specifically the res, feels like it might cause a very different dynamic, at least in terms of some of these team fights. But also, Sobek is looking for blood. Speaking of blood, Dardas uses the stinger early, tries to get some damage, does get the damage, tries to get the kill, and comes up just a little short there in mid. But a lot of pressure from the Warriors this time around. Last time, the Bolts duo pressure was going their way. Mid pressure was going their way. Now it's about 1,000 gold, a little over, in favor of the Warriors with no first blood.
Yeah, Dardas is able to claim the beads off of Venenu at the very least, so maybe opens up some room for Cuvo Fred to get active because that Fear No Evil is available. I imagine Fear No Evil in the Stinger probably enough to net a kill on a set, unless, of course, Ven's hiding underneath that tower. So you got to make sure you're paying attention to where Ven is able to teleport to, where those sand clones are in that mid lane, I guess. And now Lasbro rotating over. Remember, Neil was able to steal this one last time. I think they probably noticed Lasbro was on the way, or at least that they shouldn't be going for an invade in this situation. But now, as you said, the Hogs are still available. We're 5 minutes into the game. They both still have them. I imagine just getting soloed here soon, or just used for some extra DPS on the buffs later on. But they've served their usefulness. Neil was still able to steal away that purple buff despite the fact that the Hog was available.
That just goes, good control that Neil has been able to execute over Jake's existence this game. That is good. Great. Speaking of great, 2-man Fear No Evil feels so fantastic for Cuvo. No follow-up. They have a little bit of honey towards the end. Darda's just not quite there. No rotation from Nika. So a beautiful, beautiful ult. Pretty much for nothing.
Yeah, it seemed like it was trying to go for the Greater Scorpion invade. Didn't end up getting it. You can see the Olympus Bolts have their upgraded buff, so not going to be enough. And if Dardas was there, a possible kill opportunity onto Venenu. But now, a minute left for those beads. I don't imagine Ven's going to put himself in a position where he's going to die because of that. In the next 50 seconds or so, there's not really anything to step up towards, considering most of the buffs are down, and there's no Pyromancer, and no one is feeling confident enough to go for the Gold Fury at this moment. And so at the very least, some aggression from the Oni Warriors. Throwing out that ultimate, that sort of thing. Another stinger goes through onto Lasbro. So much damage, the beads gets used. And actual Jake comes in to grab the beads off of Dardas as well.
Yeah, trying to keep things going for the team. Doesn't seem like Jake has much left in the tank. Neil just off the mark from getting a pluck. With the low mana and all the survivability Jake had just dropped, maybe could have resulted in something. Also, Stinger taken deep into the tier 1 there in mid. Darda's not going to be able to get that one back. Has to play the waiting game. Has gone for the Transcendence again, so maybe not that hurt about it. Vin, beads are going to be back up. Beads burned by Lasbra. So some small wins, some small losses there for both sides.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm looking to see when Vote and Barra are going to start trading their ultimates for each other. Just Fields of Love for Valkyrie's Discretion over and over again. Awesome Jake is going to get plucked in here. Take a bit of damage, but should be just fine. Venenu on the wraparound, though, is what I'm concerned about. Is this going to be a chase? Neil ulting just for Peel. Lurking in the waters and Fields of Love used just for trying to escape at that point. It looked like Neil was going to pluck Jake. I'm like, you just decided you didn't want to fight. You can't go back in. Can't be that wishy-washy. Probably the smart call. Just using both ultimates for safety. Give up on that purple buff invade. I think once Vote fully stacks that Dev Gauntlets, though, that's when we're going to see some actual boxing between him and Barracuda, because that's when the fight gets a little bit more interesting. With the extra 10 penetration now, you're doing a bit more damage. Your autos are going to chunk a little bit harder, especially up against a Freya. Has some decent early prots.
Finishes the first ring just now, so Barra may be able to start getting somewhat active in these fights. I mean, you know, late game Freya still the one that is most bonkers in the game, but you have to imagine some decent damage that can be out there. Nice little steal from Cubo. Can he get away with it? Fear No Evil thrown out, but gets tossed to the Sharks. Can't disengage here. And a clean kill for first blood by the Bolts.
That is a first blood 8 minutes in off the back of Cubo, going a little bit too aggressive without any beads. I mean, I like the call, but you didn't know where Awesome Jake was. You didn't know where the rest of the team was, and unfortunately, we're on a Rage of Steel right back into the rest of the team. Lasbra gets credit for that one. So Cubo did have a little bit of a lead in the jungle up until that point. Still up XP-wise, but I imagine once Lasbra starts, I was going to say, getting some of these buffs, should be able to confirm, but now Tarda's in more trouble.
Oh no, what an easy kill onto the AMC. Oh, blink and you miss it. That is a 3-man core from the Bolts. That has been devastating. Again, they are fighting into a deficit the Warriors had built up, and now it's virtually nothing. I mean, you're talking 100 to 200 gold spread across 5 members means nothing at any point in this game, so the Bolts making us as dead even as possible with 2 kills. The fight's going their way. Hell, if Jake decided to, they maybe could have continued getting aggressive on Neil. Which just showcases how unsafe it can be for the Warriors in the jungle.
I gotta highlight Neil again. That was a race. I don't know if you might have caught the tail end of it. Neil and Jake were both going for the last obelisk up on the top left of the map, and Neil plucked underneath Jake's axe to be able to grab that trebuchet for his team. Just putting on a support masterclass at the moment. Gonna be able to invade the purple buff in the process, taking that one away from Barracuda. So good plays all around from the Croc, trying to make sure that the trebuchet goes over in right lane. Probably won't be able to use it for a little bit just because it's over in solo lane, and I don't imagine that there's going to be any more pressure put towards that side because Bastion's got enough wave clear to just deal with it pretty effectively. But at the very least, the obelisk pressure going over the Oni Warriors in a situation where the Bolts have 2 kills. Gold lead, though, still in their favor. The Oni Warriors have been able to farm the map pretty effectively here, despite the fact of Cubo falling 4 first blood to Lasbra, still has the XP lead. At the moment, level 10 to his 9. I want to see a little bit more aggression from Lasbra, though, just because Cubo has the blink, no beads available. I think the 1v1 opportunity in the jungle could have been what he was chasing him down there for in the back camps. But also, a lot of single target damage on the Bastet just exceeds in the 1v1 rather than a team fight. Whereas Cubo just wants to hit 5-man Fear No Evils consistently wherever he can.
I don't know why the way you said single target there made me think that we need a single ladies parody. That's just single target.
Single target.
All the CC in the game.
All the CC. All the CC.
There you go. You know what? Maybe it's just all the CC. That honestly seems maybe a little bit better than what I was going at. It was a Greater Scorpion confirmed for the Bolts here. Now on to the Pyromancer. As they start up this play, Neil, Nika, Cuvo, all in the neighborhood. Darda's a little too far, but that's enough presence from the Warriors. The Bolts feel too confident in being able to get the Pyromancer. They fall back. That's when you got to look at the relic choices again. Everybody's got theirs, but ults are up. Pluck good onto Jake. No stinger used by Dardes makes me think that they weren't too serious about trying to get that kill. And more just trying to get some poke out there and see what kind of vibe check the Bolts.
I can't be the only one that's thinking this. For some reason, whenever Dardes casts the Swarm, it sounds like Rama ult going up, and I keep looking for the Rama. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm the only one who hears that, but whenever Dardes uses one, it's either 2 or the 3. It sounds like, what?
Well,
And
that
he's,
was
like,
just
going
a
up.
scream.
Well, yeah, that was it. when he
Very
plays it.
Halloween-y.
Yeah. No, it was none of those. Man, now I'm just trolling.
I think you're making it up.
No, you'll hear it eventually. Ven does go in with the Kingslayer. They're looking for Cubo Fred.
And if Fear No Evil, at least for some peel, Vote's in danger. Has to try and disengage. Jake has the ult, grabs Vote, and tosses him back. An easy pickup for the Bolts, and let's just keep them running for him. 2 kills clean on the left-hand side. Maybe looking for a little more. Force the beads out of Dardez with the Huntress of Bass. That Gold Fury, it's been made to be easier to slay early on. You've got an Amaterasu. Might as well take advantage of it. Go for the kill. It's not going to be all they said and done. The Warriors maybe wanted to look for a contest. Not going to be there in time. The Bolts get 2 kills plus the Gold Fury.
Yeah, got to give big props there to Baskin, out-rotating Nika, getting there first, and doing tons of damage for the team. But now,
Oh, no.
Cubo, no beads available. Looks like trying to follow the jump here, not going to be the call. Just a little bit stuck in place was Cubo Fred. It seemed like was trying to take the 1v1 up against Barracuda, decided not to go for it, but then stuck around a little bit too long, and Lazarus makes that rotation over. More so probably just trying to cover Vote's wave and save his buff from the invade. Unfortunately stuck around, and now 0-2 on the Hun bets. One of those picks that I don't mind it too much, you know, falling behind because you still get immense value out of the ultimate, but letting the rest of the Bolts get ahead, I think that's pretty scary. I mean, look at the XP differential.
Yeah, when you look up not just XP, but then you see 5-0. You look at the gold that was like, what, 1,000 in favor of the Warriors earlier. Now sitting about 2,000 in favor of the other side. 1,700 experience, 13 minutes in. I mean, that's a substantial amount. And, like, you might look at it, most of the Bolts are going to tick over to the next level prior, right? And
yep.
for some of that, it's going to be a damage boost. Depends on the level. Sometimes could be an ult boost. And that's
Those are important.
Yeah, that really matters for some of these guys. We'll see if they can maybe take that advantage and dial it up to 11. Pyromancer's still hanging around on the map. That's something that the Bolts have been notorious to go for first. And they tried to go for it a little earlier, so you know it's on their mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's it right there. Did you hear it?
Hoo-ah!
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah.
I just had to make sure that I'm not crazy. Maybe I am. Doesn't matter at this point. At least we all heard it. And now we get to see the Pyromancer possibly looked at by the Oni Warrior. I mean, the Olympus Bolts, rather. They have the pressure on this side of the map, but they don't look to be going for it. I mean, they have that vision, but because Venenu is on an assassin-type character, there's not too much amazing DPS. If Baskin rotates over, though, I think immediately could be able to shred that Pyromancer and increase their lead as much as possible. Probably waiting for Ven's beads and Aegis to be back up. That'll be about 11 seconds away, and then both relics will be available. Then they can use that pressure towards their advantage. Because of the fact that Cubo has access to the Blink, Fear No Evil, probably a smart call to back it
They're
up.
already
Jake
on it.
blinks in, and they're going to go that one for free.
Yeah, they sat on there. Look, Baskin rotates over. They've got enough damage between the two of them. So they take that Pyromancer down quickly. Fear No Evil towards the end, not able to steal it away. But does, again, maybe just find some CC. Doesn't burn any relics on the other side. The Bolts have been playing this one so far, honestly, impeccably. Very different from the first couple of weeks of play.
I mean, yeah, we've said it before. The Oni Warriors have never been able to beat the Bolts, despite the fact that the Bolts are sitting very low in the standings currently, and the Oni Warriors are very high. Looks like Game 3 situation. The Bolts really showed up in the early game, trying to get the rest of the team online. Awesome Jake does have to use the ultimate there. Neil Ma also just trading out CC immunity in that case. But here comes Venenu over to the purple buff, more specifically over towards Vote. Just playing the zone duty, making sure to steal that one away. Barra's got to feel real comfortable in this lane currently. Like, Vote walks up, sees Barra, and immediately dashes towards the tower. Does not want to try and outbox. With the Hasten Ring and the Ring of Akate, a ton of attack speed and damage come from this Freya.
Yeah, and those are two things that no one wants to deal with when Freya's got them. You need to stay away. Maybe we'll see how soon it takes. I mean, we've seen a lot of rotations so far this game. Feels like Vote and Barra will end up being a lot more involved than they have been up to this point. 16 minutes in, still a very comfortable lead for the Bolts. And also, I love the lineup. Just ones down the column. Everybody's gotten a kill to make up the 5. It'd be nice if the assists were also lined up, but we can ignore that.
I mean, it's just Lasbra, like everyone else. Can you guys get more active, please?
Yeah.
Lasbra 104, everyone else 101, 103, 103, 102. That's just because you leave Barracuda over on this little island. And also, Baskin hasn't made the rotation. I know you smiled. I know you heard it that time. I could see the look on your face. It's just a nice subtle voice line, but
Because it makes me think of the, I guess it's like the space ROM skin, right? Like
Yeah.
where he has the mask
Yeah.
on over it
Yep.
for it to sound specifically like that. But it is a very similar yell.
Here we go. Oh,
He
didn't
didn't
even
do it
do
that
it this
time.
time. Dang it.
He did. Okay, so every third for some reason.
Yeah, it's every third honey. We'll get to hear that one. Either way, Primal Fury spawning in here shortly, and it looks like Cuvo was trying to put some pressure over on the left side of the map, open up some space, but Nika learned his lesson. Both solo laners rotated over immediately before this Fury even spawned in. Looks like we're going to see a true 5v5 at the very least, or maybe the Bolts will just try to rotate in for this one.
We'll see where they put their pressure. You'd mentioned it, a level down for Cuvo. Neil has to play safe. 2 levels down there. Option for a second relic available for Jake the minute that he decides to go back there was. I think you looked, I didn't even look over at you. I could see you in the side of my eye. A piercing gaze from Trelly to make sure that I acknowledged that it happened.
I'm sorry. It's happened so many times now. I can't unhear it whenever it comes through. The Olympus Bolts certainly do have pressure towards the objective as they're going to start the pull for a second Baskin. Actually, they want to try and DPS it. Look where Lasper is, though. Over on right. Not really paying
his
attention.
vacation home, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, he's not even caring about the Fury. More so just trying to get some extra farm. If the Oni Warriors notice that, maybe they're just too afraid to go for the fight at this point. Lasbra can rotate pretty quickly. Actually goes in to get the beats down on Dardas and pulls in Nika.
Yeah, that might be big for them. Nika already half health, 3 on the Bolts. Take what they get and leave. Relic choices on the other side, specifically the beads being down for Dardas, the stinger being down for Dardas. Seems to give them the opening comfort they wanted.
Yeah, now it's going to be the full-on reset. I think Lasbra was trying to farm up for a bit of a power spike there. Does have the Heartseeker online after farming over and right. And now we can see Baskin still has not went back over to right lane. So the Primal Fury certainly on the brain of the Olympus Bolts. They want to try and find that aggression. Getting the beads down from Dardas could have been the key to trying to make that happen. That will be the call. Start DPS immediately. Take a look at Lasbra, though, zoning off as well, trying to make sure this Primal Fury goes down.
It's been so clean so far. Bolts, yeah, no problems with that one. Vote was there. Neil was there. Unfortunately for them, they just had to watch it. Good CC from the Bolts, make sure that nobody can step forward. Nika trying to get a consolation prize in a Tier 1 tower. Pyromancer about to spawn back, give or take a minute. So the Bolts, lots of options, 3,000 gold still, so a little more stagnant, maybe a little plateauy for them. But it has been good, well played by the Bolts to make sure that they have this amount of a lead. You can see, again, small level advantages all over the map. But mainly
Barra's
down in the duo lane,
19.
yeah.
That is wild. I mean, Barra was 19 in about 19 minutes. Vote just ticked over to 18, so a true level and a half in favor of the Freya. I mean, Gemma Focus probably going to be online here real short. Look at the XP per minute, 720. Closest to him is Baskin, 40 XP per minute behind. So Barra has been absolutely power farming, trying to carry this game for his team. I'm not saying he's like solo carry because everyone's been playing.
Highest net worth as well.
Everyone's been playing extremely well, but for a mage whose items are the most expensive, Barra playing well to make sure he's got the itemization to certainly help out in these team fights. Once level 20 comes through, could be looking to upgrade, but look at this. Neil trying to defend the Pyromancer. Not going to be able to.
I admire it, though, right? Stand around. What else are you doing in the jungle over here? Not much, 4,000 gold. So finally being able to push past the plateau. The Bolts had established. Lots of experience as we had highlighted. Dardas getting thrown around. Bead's not there, and this might just be the kill. Vin gets aggressive and puts a 6th on the board, but there's the Fear No Evil. Vin takes a little bit of poke. No one was able to find the kill onto him. The Heart Bomb hits Jake instead, and now with Nika rotating into the back, it might be what they need. Cuvo a little low. There's the ult from Nika, and now the hammer slam down onto Lasbra. Not enough to get the kill, but enough to make the Bolts rethink their position.
Ven and Dardas both down, but it looks like the Oni Warriors are surging forward here. I don't imagine the Tier 1 tower seems to be something that they could go for, even with Lasbra that low, heading back to base. Probably not going to be the call, considering the Fury and the Pyromancer down. That's probably the last bit of fighting we're going to see, barring maybe a crazy blink in, which actually no blinks are available, so that's not going to be the call. Vote.
Hey.
Picked up here.
Yeah, the last little bit of fighting that we would see, except for this, where Vote is one shot away from dead. Baskin's going to get credit for it. Barra chunking in terms of damage. You had mentioned the rings, now 4 of them completed. The full brass knuckle Freya available. And it is just absolutely bonking through any gods that stand in their way. Baskin rotates into the back of the tier 1 in mid. It seems like the Bolts aren't going to contest this one too heavily. Get a little bit of poke on the tower and then fall back.
Yeah, without fail, anytime I see a little bit of a scrap, I can expect to see Lazra finding farm elsewhere. I mean, over on left lane currently, pushing the waves. Whenever there's a fight on left, he's probably over on right, making sure to keep that XP lead, keeping up that gold lead. As we said, Bear taking over to 20. Basket now picking over to 20 as well. Got the Death's Embrace, so that's going to help with the sustain and the damage this Amaterasu's been able to do. But I imagine we're heading up to Fire Giant territory. I mean, well, there's no more items for Bear to farm up here. We see a 1v1 happening. Cuvo didn't get hit by the Huntress of Bass, but used the beads just in case. Didn't want to try and go for the 1v1 in that situation, but no more farm to be had. ADC's heading over to right, and I don't think it's for a gang. This is probably for a Fire Giant opportunity. With Baskin's passive, it's going to be shred down real quick.
Yeah, already sitting at half health for the Fire Giant. Neil, going to spot this one out. Dardez is over here. Voted started over on left. Cuvo slow rolling over to the FG, but they're going to be able to get here in time. The Bolts drop the Fire Giant. Maybe Trelly could have coin tossed it, and we live in a world where the Warriors either get a steal and it's insane, or the Bolts fall apart. Bad sense of deja vu right now for me, by the way. This kind of scenario, specifically for the Bolts as well. We'll maybe see if they can get something done. Pluck onto Jake, locks him down with some honey, leaps from Xingqian, get him out of there. So it's not going to be an easy pick for the Bolts. Baskin, meanwhile, started and is just holding on to the FG. No one's really helping him out, though. Trying to see what they can get for it. 3/4 health on the jungle boss. And just maintaining that to see if they can get the Warriors to come fight. The answer seems to be no, and the Bolts are going to fall back.
Yeah, I imagine Lazra still just looking to see if Cuvo will step up without beads. A pick there would be massive because, again, there's no real burst. There's incredible amounts of burst, I should say, for this Fire Giant. So, fear no evil. Could really throw a wrench in your plans. Once your whole team gets taunted and feared away, you're not really able to confirm your DPS as quickly as you might like. So, that's what I was waiting for, to see if Lazar would be able to find this Hunbats in the jungle before that objective came through. Not going to be the call. And actually, now we're seeing a regrouping over towards the Oni Fury that just touched down. True 5v5 situation. No beads for 60 seconds. For Cuvo Fred, and that's got to be the target, right? Until those beads come back up, he can't really blink in effectively. There's just a ton of CC that the Olympus Bolts have to try and deal with it, especially a whoop from Barracuda or just a whirlwind of Rage and Steel from Awesome Jake. You're not going to be living through that one. Cuvo Fred's full glass cannon with this build.
We'll see what he can accomplish. Lazra, several times last game, just demolished Cuvo in 1v1s. Would catch him out in mid, catch him out in the jungle, wherever it happened to be. The Bastet was almost always coming out ahead, whether it was just sheer damage or kill potential. Lazar was the one leading that. Speaking of sheer damage, Bolts feel confident in their capabilities. You had mentioned with the Amaterasu of burning things down. They're going for the Oni Fury. Baskin and Barra going to be the last ones to hit it. Vin already starting to rotate over. Pyromancer spawning shortly. So the Bolts, a death grip on this map. 6,000 gold up, 7 kills to 1 on the other side. Lots of level 20s. Still an advantage in the jungle and in the carry role as far as experience goes. The Warriors need something to grab onto and help balance this out.
Yeah, Neil has 2 items currently. It's just looking real hard to try and frontline as a Sobek. Any pluck that gets beads guarantees that Neil dies. Like, that's usually the case for Sobek, but there's just no way with Gauntlet of Thieves and Shoguns you're going to be able to live through any sort of damage that the Olympus Bolts have. So Neil, probably smart to stay back, play the peel game until, I imagine, you get a little bit more tank stats built up on this Sobek. Jake, of course, got the Emperor's Armor and the Sentinel's Boon, so that's going to help him survive. And also blink to the backline consistently, as he has been doing on this Xingqian. But the Oni Fury minions are coming through. And those are going to help out. It's going to split up the map a wee bit, as the Oni Warriors have to try and deal with those, or if they don't, are going to lose some towers in the process. All of this so that the Olympus Bolts could try a pull on the Fire Giant. But we've already stated, with Cuvo Fred around, with Fear No Evil available, it is not going to be easy to try and go for this Fire Giant in a 5v5 situation.
Can they pull it? I mean, you've got some decent burn. Like you said, difficult, and it doesn't seem like they want to. 26 minutes in, though. No Fire Giants pulled. By the time, at least at this pace and this rate, we might not see a Fire Giant until it's EFG. Tier 1 and right, burned down. Baskin makes sure to pick that one up. That's another insane thing. There's now been 2 total towers taken down, both Tier 1s and right. And then just now, I think the Tier 1 and left got eliminated. So well on their way for the Bolts. And they're going to start the same little song and dance, Shelly. Fire Giant sitting at 5/6 of his health bar. Baskin's just dancing around the pit, doing his best to make sure this one can be started up, but falling back and letting the team redecide how they aggress into this.
Yeah, this is the issue with Freya. If Barracuda uses Pulse to try and help DPS the Fire Giant, he doesn't have Pulse for if the Oni Warriors do decide to defend and want to fight, so you kind of just have to let Baskin hit the Fire Giant for a bit until you do decide to commit to it. You could see Lasbro was sort of in mid lane, just zoning off the members of the Oni Warriors, trying to split up the farm as much as possible in the meantime. Never doing nothing is probably the name of the game here, just making sure there's always some farm to be had. Finally, that Trebuchet for the Oni Warriors being sent out in the right lane to try and counteract the Trebuchet that the Olympus Bolts have sent through. Oni Warriors have dealt with the Oni minions from that Oni Fury. Say that 5 times fast.
I don't want to.
You don't have to, because we're going to... I'm not your boss. I can't make you do anything. You don't have to worry about those anymore, so the minions are going to be cleared up. And now it's back to, as you said, probably going to be pushing into the EFG here soon. 2 minutes before that Fire Giant does evolve. And we have seen the Fire Giant's health not go below like 60% since this dance started.
Yeah, it's a lot of potential for them to maybe start it up. Like you said, depends on how Bera's feeling. There's going to be the Pulse used. They might be committing to this Fire Giant. Have health already. Neil, Nika in the back line. Vote isolated by Jake, and it's going to need a little bit of help here to make sure things don't go awry. Use both relics and the ult to try and disengage. Nika left on their own. Tries to get the hammer. Has a lot of damage there with a great Fear No Evil. Is able to help pick up Venenu, but it's 1 for 1. It's 2 for 1 as the chase down from the Bolts is good on to Cuvo. Now Neil trying to do his best, but you highlighted it earlier. Hard to be a tank when you only have the 2 items. And a killing spree for Bera, 3-0-4 for the Freya, and the Bolts lead 10-3.
Yeah, both ADCs stayed alive here, though. Dardes and Vote are sitting around the Fire Giant Baskin once again. Is going to start up this pull as Bera's going to wait to try and find the Whoop. Does find it onto Vote. The silence after he's gone, and Dardes is coming soon. Does big damage onto Lazarus, but the relics are here. He's going to be burned down eventually, right?
Yeah, AMC. Well, I was going to say not known for his movement. Some great juke shoes, almost, and he gets it from the grave.
Wow.
Baskin's able to shut him down, get the deicide for the Bolts, but you lose Lasbra in the process. Bera's too low. They're going to start up the Fire Giant anyway. Have to play this carefully, tank it carefully. With Vin respawning in 2, and the timer in about 8 seconds, turning this one to an EFG. It still feels like a massive win for the Bolts.
Yeah, definitely. EFG on 4. Yeah, I was going to say they waited just until the 30-minute timer there. So EFG on 4. Just a beautiful setup there. Great whoop by Barracuda waiting for Vote. Unfortunate that both relics were down. And actually, I think Jake plays that fight pretty well. Blinks right towards Vote, pops Horrific Emblem, and then says, you know what, I'm not going to ult you, I'm not going to CC you, but I'm going to stand here and you're horrific. So eventually, like, the rest of the team's going to show up. Vote realizes that. Both relics dashes away. And maybe he doesn't die, but is able to instantly get 100-0'd off the whoop from Barracuda later on because there's just no relics available. Dardes does go massive. I mean, he stalls out a bit, and he takes the EFG away from Lazarus before it even goes down. So that's, in a situation that definitely should have been, an easy 3-man collapse onto the AMC. At the very least, took EFG off 1, but not an easy spot for the Oni Warriors to be in. Enhanced Fire Giant goes down, an 8K gold deficit. And now the Olympus Bolts are able to group up and start taking down these towers. The last of the Tier 1s drops in mid first. Baskin leading the charge towards the Tier 2. Primal Fury's up, Pyromancer's up. There's plenty of gold for the Bolts to pick off here, but because it's an enhanced Fire Giant, they don't seem too scared to march up towards the Phoenix at the very least. But Lasber going back for the minions. Probably the call just to pick up some farm in the meantime.
You get some farm. I mean, gold has not been an issue at all for the Bolts this game. 10,000 in the lead, just a little shy of that And if they get this tier 2, or the Primal, or the Pyro, or a Phoenix, like you had highlighted, lots of options for them in terms of gold capabilities. This is where things get awkward, though, because you've got 2 Assassins. When they get in there, much as you can see from Finn here, the tower is going to die super fast. But Freya, as far as tower killer goes, not necessarily at the top of the list compared to some of the other players of the Bolts, just the range maybe playing against them there.
Yeah, not going to be easy. But at least the left side Phoenix has a grouping here from the Bolts. Baskin with EFG able to certainly sustain up on all of these waves with the Death Embrace as well. So able to take the 1v1 versus Nika with the Scourge means this Phoenix probably not going down anytime soon if it's just Baskin swinging away. Probably the call, though, is to take Nika away from Barracuda, make sure that the pulse doesn't come through, and get your swings in when you can onto the Phoenix. We see 2 autos or so and then back up. Now finally the Bolt's feeling a bit confident, walk in. Phoenix is not going down fast, but once the pulse comes through from Barra, that's the retreat call. I mean, there's no other ranged auto attacks to take this Phoenix down, so it's pulse, get your autos in, and back up. That was pulse right there. That much damage. It's going to take a lot of rotations of that ability to try and take down the Phoenix that way.
If you can give Vin or Lasbra a little bit of breathing room with this EFG, that Phoenix is going to go down very fast. Lasbra trying to create some breathing room. Blink over the wall. Damage onto Cuvo. There's going to be Fields of Love onto Barra. They're splitting up the fight. Vin is the target, but gets out barely with his life. Cuvo looks for a Fear No Evil, drops it way too early, and unfortunately won't be able to close the gap. Instead, Baskin makes it to the backline, kills off Vote. Cuvo's low. They find Vin with a deep dive. The Warriors are not done just yet. They throw Lasbra into the Phoenix, and now with the damage necessary, they're going to be able to take him down, but he's not going down without a fight. 2 for 2 so far, still slightly favoring the Warriors on the defense. Phoenix left standing. Baskin backed, teleported back in. Barra's full health. Jake healthy enough. They're going to keep this fight going. Immediate dive onto Dardez. There's going to be the Hive in return, the Swarm, the Honey, everything trying to make sure they slow down the Bolts. The Phoenix is left standing. Jake is low. Stinger dropped.
12 seconds.
Only a little bit of time to work with. I don't think they're getting this Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't think so. Barracuda has been the only one to hit this Phoenix. Not a single other Bolt has been able to make it all the way towards that Phoenix. Finally, Baskin goes in, but the EFG is gone. Baskin not doing enough damage. It looks like we'll be able to get stopped here if the autos keep getting body blocked.
Yeah, trying, does get the Phoenix, loses his life. Jake low. Barra isolated at this point. They're just going to kill the Hunter for the Bolts like it's nothing. The carry gone. Jake, yeah, you can make it out of here or not. No, the stun from Nika puts him in the ground. Double kill for Dardez and a minute without the Bolts duo lane.
Yeah, a minute without the Bolts, and that enhanced Fire Giant is going to be spawning up here shortly.
Yeah.
Are the Oni Warriors going to be able to push out and go towards it? Definitely yes, but what happens in the meantime? What will Lasbra and Ven be able to do on the Oni Warriors? 5 strong are heading towards the enhanced Fire Giant. I imagine nothing. That would be my call. Let the EFG go, unfortunately, but I'm checking out the positioning here. Lasbra clearing the wave. Ven seem to try and wrap around for a second, but maybe just trying to push up the wave, see if a red buff can be stolen away. There's not much that these assassins can do as the enhanced Fire Giant about to touch down in about 10 seconds. I mean, that's pretty much it. Baskin already teleported. There's no way he's going to be making in. You just got to get some farm in the meantime. The Oni Warriors with a very solid defense lose their Phoenix, but you got enhanced Fire Giant. You can't care that much unless Lasbra goes in for the steal here. I'm surprised he made it, but he's here.
He's going to look for it over the wall. There's the leap. What? Get the Fire Giant off the leap of the Bastet. 4 members get the EFG. Now Lasbra just has to get out with his life. There's the stun from Nika. How far can he make it? The leap is there. Barra is here for the whoop with the peel. The Bolts make the play, and they continue to hold the lead.
I mean, Lasbra, did he even have vision? I think my man just guessed and happened to get it right, but it looked so cleanly timed that I'm thinking he had a little bit of vision. Either way, the Olympus Bolts sieging forward. They got the left side Phoenix, and they get enhanced Fire Giant on 4. Baskin is going to lead the charge here on a Neilma, but it doesn't look like wanting to fight are the Oni Warriors. Probably bunkering down underneath the Titan is the smart call to be made. The gold leads 11K in their favor, and they also have enhanced Fire Giant. They're going to run it down right, take the last tier 2 tower, as the Fire Minions are eventually going to push up on left as well. We've seen how strong the Oni Warriors defense is, and more specifically how weak the Olympus Bolt siege is.
Yeah.
But now that the Phoenix is down, I imagine it's going to get a lot easier.
Baskin did a lot of work to get that one there. Lasbra, though, maybe MVP of the set just for that play if they win. This has been a long set, especially if you look at the Bolts' loss streak right now. Not something they want to continue growing. Their win streak over the Warriors, 9 sets in a row that they've beaten them, with none for the Warriors on the other side, trying now to get aggressive, close this one out. They've got fire minions on left, Trelly. It feels like they're on the precipice of keeping things alive, of ending their loss streak, but it's all going to have to come through here. Aggressive on the right side, Phoenix. Jake is trying to get to the back line. Jake is trying to lead the way. There's a frenzy on the other side. Engage from the Warriors is going to be good. There's the Fear No Evil. Isolates Barra, forces the ult, and makes him fall up and fall behind right now. Baskin's low, but they don't have the damage to close this one out. Baskin is going to retreat. Warriors all low. Bolts incredibly low. Trying to siege into the Phoenix. Baskin has run all the way around and kept Dardas attached. They're going to have to relinquish this Phoenix over to the Bolts. That's going to be a nice clean pickup.
Wow,
for the Chaos team.
I actually think Baskin running away is what got that Phoenix there. I mean, Dardas was doing so much damage. The Honey was such an annoying tool for the Olympus Bolts to try and get in and take the Phoenix down. But because Dardas chased Baskin the whole way over and didn't get the kill in the process, the right side Phoenix falls down. Notably, that left bird is going to spawn back in here shortly. But it seems like the Olympus Bolts happy to just get one Phoenix down. They have to throw everything they've got to just confirm one single Phoenix. I have to imagine the call's got to be to look for the fight. I mean, it just takes too long. Barracuda can't really focus on hitting the Phoenix when he's trying to DPS the tanks. Neilma and Nika have been consistently scourging the auto attackers of the Olympus Bolts, making sure that they can't just grab these Phoenixes. But now with the right side bird down, and the left side Phoenix is about 2 autos away. Finally another grouping here from the Olympus Bolts, this time 5 strong on the left side of the map. Baskin and Lasbra, though, are going to rotate over towards mid because they have that enhanced fire giant. They're able to step it if Nika allows them. It's going to be a slow, methodical siege. Both the Ven's relics are down. Besides that, looking pretty clean here for the Bolts.
Missing a little bit, specifically for Baron, no beads, which could cause some trouble. Ult had to be used defensively last time. Cuvo has to use the beads right here to stay alive. Dardes is getting dove on. Dardes is just gone the duo lane, just barely able to burst forward, but the Bolts do not care. They get a triple kill for Venenu, most of his life traded out. But Cuvo, there's only so much you can do here in this kind of scenario. What a good-looking Fear No Evil with nothing behind. 4 members of the Bolts walk in. The win streak versus the Warriors continues, and their loss streak in the SPL ends right here.
I mean, just the fact that Ven was celebrating his triple, then gets immediately shut down by Cuvo. Just too good, but wow. Well played there by the Bolts. I had some questions about the composition.
Hugs,
the hug, you got to give Lasbra the hug on that steal. I mean, that was Barra saying thank you for saving my mental, and also for the enhanced fire shine. That's exactly what that hug was.
I mean, that game, drastically different landscape if the Warriors get that. I mean, completely, probably a Warriors win if they get that.
Certainly could have been.
Insane to think that he was able to even like you said, perfectly timed jump.
Yep.
Even whether they would factor in vision or not, who cares?
Yep.
The fact that he got that surrounded by 5 alone is just genuinely impressive.
Yeah, I would say so. And the fact that not only did they get that steal, they were able to translate that into. I mean, their sieges were not clean, right? Like, the Freya was not doing that much damage to these Phoenixes, but, as a unit, I think Baskin, very effective at getting to the backline, making sure that these double ADCs could not free cast. And, Nika and Neil, got to give them credit. They were able to slow down as much as possible, but not enough. Not enough to keep those birds alive. Not enough to keep the base unbroken there for the Oni Warriors.
Unfortunate for them, it is a 9-0, now 10-0 win streak for the Bolts versus the Warriors. They have never been able to beat the Bolts, and unfortunately that is going to continue to be the case. The Bolts, with some insane plays, take this set 2-1 after falling down in that first game. But you don't got to take it from me. We're going to go over to the desk and they can break this one down.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gore and Shrelly. Game number 3 goes to the Olympus Bolts, and what a hell of a game to have witnessed here today. I mean, the Olympus Bolts pull up a very early lead throughout that game, keep that momentum going throughout the stages. The Oni Warriors are able to slow things down just a little bit. The Phoenix Siege is definitely where the Olympus Bolts struggled in that department, but their fights after. And I got to give a big shout out to Baskin in multiple Phoenix Sieges, able to keep the Hunters distracted in the back line long enough for Barracuda to slowly whittle down these birds.
And it was slow.
And not just that, I mean, multiple times I saw Baskin able to get into the enemy fountain area and back inside of base, then come back to these fights. It happened in the one on the left side, Phoenix, happened again on the one on the right. Got to give massive props over to the solo laner, and a big congrats to the Olympus Bolts. This is a win that these guys definitely needed in this phase.
Yeah, a phenomenal win for the Bolts, just to get some sort of wind in their sails. Just so impressed, not only with their entire team performance, because that is a composition that has a clear execution factor. You need to win out in the early. You need to be able to transition that into objective plays, but also just the ability to somehow siege up against a strong defensive composition with a draft that was just not built for siege whatsoever. I don't think a single one of those birds went down in less than an entire full minute of concentrated effort. So the Olympus Bolts deserve every bit of credit they can get, but you got to give a lot of those props to Baskin. Baskin does so much. He's the initiator in a lot of these team fights. He's getting into objectives and stealing fire giants. He's separating fights. He's diving and creating space. He's surviving and backing in the enemy base. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm no lip reader, but I'm watching the cams. I'm watching these guys play. It seems like Baskin's just talking a lot too. So I hope during the interview we get an idea of who the new primary shot caller is for the Olympus Bolts. But I'm giving every bit of credit that I can to Baskin, man. That was an incredible performance.
Not just a Baskin stealing objectives, a fire giant stolen by Lasbra at the end of that game to turn it back around for the Bolts, and we've got the man of the hour standing by, Lasbra, for a post-game interview with Gore.
Yeah, that's right. I've got Lasbra here, and I mean, obviously we're going to talk about the fire giant steal, but before that, I do want to get into this idea, right? The Bolts, you guys have not been on a great streak lately. Losses have been a little more abundant than maybe you would like. You finally get this win, so I want to know what's going through your mind now, and how does the horizon look for the rest of the team?
I mean, it's looking good. I'm pretty happy with this win. We still have a lot of stuff to figure out with draft, how we want to play, and like just stuff that we value. Yeah.
Well, I know that it's been, and Mifflin had mentioned it, like the question of like shot calling, losing Haddix, things like that. How's that transitioned for the team? Have things kind of become a little more clear in comms over the last few weeks?
I mean, you see the games, they're a little bit crazy, and we do some crazy stuff, and we are still. Again, it's a work in progress right now with the shot calling, but I mean, we mainly have me and Baskin trying to work out and figure out what to do in those late game and mid games decisions.
Well, obviously it's working out well, right? You're able to get here. Speaking of late game decisions, again, we have to go back to it. Now we can talk about your fire giant steal. Because I asked you when you came up, and we were wondering it, but you didn't have a lot of vision. You threw your cat out, and that was the only thing that could show it to you.
Yeah, so I threw the cat out, and I think Nika could maybe assume it a little bit better, but he went towards fire, and then I just like, okay, if they get DFG here, they're probably going to win, so I just went in like, yeah, I'm going to jump in. I have Seer as well, so I have a little bit higher burst than what other AD carries can do of burst.
It was watching it from our perspective, and like you got to see the replay there. Yeah. It perfectly timed, like right over the wall. Like if you had hesitated a second longer, or you'd gone a second sooner, probably would not have gotten it. Absolutely insane play from you. Obviously hugs from the team afterward. You guys get a win. I just want to know, like, how's it feeling, I guess, kind of getting that back under your belt? Do you feel like you can turn things around, especially with a bye week coming up? Like, you got some time to kind of sit back, relax, and reflect on how things have been going.
Yeah, I mean, we have shown we can get a lot of wins and a lot of wins in a row before, even without headaches. And we have Baskin, who's an excellent solo laner. So I'm not really worried about that. And like, honestly, Worlds is all that's in my side. It obviously sucks we lost this much, and we look a little bit confused here and there. But I mean, we also do end up taking wins on close games against most of the teams. So.
Well, you've never lost a set versus the Warriors, and that's going to stay true here. You get a win today, and here's a fun sneak preview for you guys, but when you come back, the next matchup you have, you'll never guess it, is against the Warriors again. That's going to be in a couple of weeks. A lot of fun, but congratulations, man, on the win. Thanks for your time. We're going to kick it back to the desk.
Yeah, thank you so much for the interview, Lasbra and Gore. Seems that the team is feeling a little bit better now. They were able to get that win under their belts. Now that they're able to finally start to get that momentum that they've been really lacking in these first couple of weeks, Mifflin, because, I mean, they get their tough-fought win against the Solar Scarabs early on in the phase, but lost to the Valkyries, losses across the board to all these other teams out there. It really does get hard, especially when you look at this. I mean, this Olympus Bolts team was like top 2, top 3 in phase 2, moving in towards Masters. And now they've finally been able to get that win for themselves, and especially in a very tough matchup like this against the #1 seed, it's got to be great for these guys.
It is, man, and it's something that the Bolts and the Bolts fans really needed to see. And it's such a tumultuous time for this team. Just seeing one go in is so important. And the Olympus Bulls being able to take it off the first seed in the league as of now, or no longer, I suppose, is also massive. Just an idea that this team is very capable of still winning, very capable of playing against the top, and clearly starting to figure out exactly what they need. It took a couple of miraculous plays in this set. Well, I'm not going to mince my words. The Oni Warriors couldn't buy a Fire Giant. That is on the Oni Warriors as well. It's multiple games where they just could not secure that objective. But putting yourself in a position to punish them for that is so difficult to do, and the Olympus Bulls deserve every bit of praise we can laud upon them.
We've had a couple really good set games between his game 2 and his game 3. Barracuda with a strong Freya in game number 3. Got to see a couple of Itzel pop-offs there. Basking on the Amaterasu, it looked really good for him. I mean, when you look down the board across, I mean, it's fairly even for everybody. Kills a pretty nice distribution across the board for all of them, but every single one of these players putting in the work to make sure that they could bring this game 3 to themselves. Lasber with the Miracle Steal at the end. I mean, as you said, throws out the cat and he kind of just has to guess, okay, is this Fire Giant ready for me to jump in and go down? Do I have enough damage to steal it? And luckily for him, it's perfect timing.
And it's not even as much of a Hail Mary play as it might appear. When you look at the Oni Warriors composition, what's their best confirmation? Stinger? I'm not sure I'm seeing AMCs use Stinger on Fire Giant just about ever. Otherwise, he brings up the fact that he has Seer of the Jungle, which gives you additional damage up against jungle bosses. So he's leveraging the fact that Pounce from Bastet plus Ultimate plus Seer, you're just hitting significantly harder than anybody on the Oni Warriors was capable of. So it was a calculated risk and one that his team really did need. He says, if they get Fire, we lose. I tend to agree. So heroic play from him to win out the set.
A big play for Lasber and the Olympus Bolts. They find their win today, and that was only our first set of the day. We still have 2 more to go, so let's take a look at the schedule, see what you can look forward to for the rest of our day. With a 2-1 win by the Olympus Bolts, that leads us into our next set, the Blood Feud. If you guys have been watching all weekend, we've been playing the commercial for it. You'll probably get to see it at least one more time. The Solar Scarabs and the Tartarus Titans. The new hunter for the Titans, Stewart, coming over from the Solar Scarabs, but now gets face off against what was his former support for a short time in Yarkor over in that duo lane. So be sure to be tuning in for the Scarabs and the Titans match. And then after that one, Atlantis Leviathans and the Valhalla Valkyries. We'll see if the Leviathans can keep up their win streak, see if maybe for the Valkyries they can find a win back. If I'm not mistaken, I think every phase the Valks have been able to find at least one set win up against the Leviathans. So if they can get that at least here in the first half of the phase, could be a good look for the Valks.
Could be. Both of these sets have huge implications on the standings as we start to move forward. The Solar Scarabs desperate to find a win whenever they can. Valhalla Valkyries find themselves in that exact same position, and even more so now because of the outcome of the previous set. With the Olympus Bolts, who were matched up with the Valkyries and the Scarabs at the bottom, finally getting a little bit of separation, finding a win for themselves, that becomes more and more difficult now for the Solar Scarabs and the Valhalla Valkyries to start jumping up in the standings. Every single one of their games, the bottom 2, so important for the entirety of the league. The top of the league doesn't want to drop games to a team that isn't winning consistently. The bottom of the league needs to start catching up to the rest of the bottom. It is a very tumultuous time in the SPL.
I mean, as you saw in the standings there, our top 4 are sitting at like 5-2 or 5-1 and upwards. Everybody below that has only been able to find 2 wins for themselves so far. So now that we've got 2 teams in the bottom 4 facing off, Tartarus Titans can look to kind of close that gap between the 5th and the 4th seed. Solar Scarabs can try and pull themselves out of that bottom 2 spot, pull themselves a little bit closer, at least to the middle, top or middle of the pack out there. So it's definitely a very important set for both of these teams out there. A good heat check made for the new Tartarus Titans and the Solar Scarabs. We'll see that matchup here in just a few minutes, so make sure that you stick around and we'll be back for our second set.